Somewhere in the shadows of history, a heavy wooden door groans open, a sound that hasn't echoed through these stone halls for hundreds of years. The only light comes from a single candle, its flame flickering wildly as if disturbed by unseen presences, casting long, dancing shadows that hide more than they reveal. This isn't just a setting from a ghost story. It's the very real, palpable feeling that clings to the places we're about to explore, locations where time itself seems to have paused, holding its breath and guarding secrets that have stubbornly resisted all explanation. For centuries, these enigmatic sites have stood as silent sentinels to a past we can scarcely comprehend, their original purposes lost, their builders' voices silenced, leaving behind only stone riddles for us to decipher. This is the world of medieval mysteries, a realm where legend and history blur, where every crumbling wall and overgrown path whispers of forgotten kings, lost technologies, and perhaps even forces that defy our modern understanding. Picture the immense effort it took to raise these structures, the thousands of hands that carved these stones and laid them one upon the other, all for a purpose that has since vanished from human memory. These aren't merely old buildings, they are colossal question marks etched into the landscape. Why was this fortress built in such an inaccessible, perilous location? What profound knowledge or terrifying power were its architects trying to contain or to keep out? The very stones seem to pulse with these unanswered questions, inviting us to look closer, to dare to understand the minds of our ancestors. These sites challenge our assumptions about the so-called Dark Ages, suggesting a sophistication and a depth of knowledge that we are only just beginning to appreciate. They force us to confront the humbling reality that our past is far stranger and more wondrous than any fiction. So, we invite you now to take hold of that flickering candle and step across the threshold with us. Leave the modern world behind for a moment and join a journey to the very edge of the known, to 25 of the most mysterious historical locations that remain completely unexplored in their truth. We will traverse windswept islands, descend into labyrinthine tunnels, and gaze upon architectural marvels that logic cannot fully explain. This is a voyage into the heart of history's greatest unsolved puzzles, a search for answers in the silence of the ages. Prepare to see the medieval world not as a dusty chapter in a textbook, but as a living, breathing enigma, filled with wonders that continue to baffle the keenest historians, archaeologists, and adventurers of our time. The door is open, the mystery awaits, and so we begin our journey not with a castle or a fortress, but with a legend so powerful it has captivated the human imagination for millennia, a story that found a particularly fertile ground in the medieval mind, the lost city of Atlantis. While the tale originates with the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, it was during the Middle Ages that this myth of a sunken, advanced civilization was eagerly woven into the very fabric of exploration and cartography. Medieval scholars and mapmakers, trying to make sense of a world that was still largely unknown, saw in Atlantis a compelling explanation for the mysteries that lay beyond the horizon. They weren't just copying old stories, they were actively using this myth to fill the blank spaces on their maps, to give a name and a history to the terrifying and wonderful unknown. One of the most fascinating artifacts from this era is the controversial Vinland map. While its authenticity is hotly debated, the map itself is a perfect window into the medieval worldview. It purportedly shows parts of North America, labeled as Vinland, but more intriguingly, it includes an inscription that references the Atlantic Ocean as a place once inhabited before it was flooded, a clear and direct nod to the Atlantean legend. For a medieval monk or cartographer, the vast, empty expanse of the ocean wasn't just water. It was a graveyard for a lost world, a constant reminder of divine punishment and the fragility of human achievement. This wasn't mere decoration on a map, it was a philosophical statement, a warning from history written in ink and parchment. the ocean was not empty, it was full of ghosts and stories. This belief fueled countless theories about where this legendary island continent might actually be found. Was it a memory of a real, catastrophic event in the Mediterranean, perhaps the volcanic eruption that devastated the Minoan civilization on Thera? Or did it lie far to the west, out in the vastness of the Atlantic, with the Azores Islands being the last mountaintops of a drowned kingdom? As the age of exploration dawned, the legend evolved yet again, with some speculating that the newly discovered Americas were Atlantis, or that its survivors had fled there, bringing their advanced knowledge with them. Every new discovery, every new coastline charted, was examined for any clue that might prove the existence of this fabled land. Yet, for all the speculation, the maps, and the passionate theories, the cold, hard truth of archaeology has never yielded a single piece of definitive evidence. No submerged marble columns have been found on the ocean floor matching Plato's description. No artifacts bearing the name of Atlantis have been unearthed. The very nature of its proposed demise, a cataclysm that sank an entire island continent in a single day and night, makes the possibility of finding tangible proof incredibly remote. This complete lack of physical evidence is precisely what secures Atlantis's place as the ultimate unexplored historical location. It exists primarily as a cultural and intellectual artifact, a mirror reflecting our own enduring desires to believe in a golden age, a lost wisdom, and the haunting idea that great civilizations can and do vanish without a trace, leaving behind only echoes in our myths and a profound mystery lying in wait beneath the waves. From the sunken dream of a lost continent, we travel now to a small, unassuming island off the coast of Nova Scotia, where a very different kind of mystery has been driving men to obsession, bankruptcy, and even death for over 200 years. This is Oak Island, and at its heart lies a puzzle so ingeniously malevolent, so fiendishly complex, that it has earned a grim nickname, the Money Pit. The story begins in 1795, when a teenager named Daniel Maginnis noticed a peculiar depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree, with a ship's pulley hanging from a branch directly above it. Convinced he had found evidence of buried treasure, he returned with two friends and started to dig. What they discovered would ignite a treasure hunt that continues to this very day. Just a few feet down, they hit a layer of flagstones not native to the island. At 10 feet, they found a platform of rotten oak logs. At 20 and 30 feet, they found more platforms. It was clear they were not digging a simple hole. They were dismantling a carefully constructed shaft, and the deeper they went, the more bizarre it became. The true genius, or the true terror of the Money Pit, revealed itself as expeditions grew more ambitious. At around 90 feet, a team using a crowbar struck something solid, a barrier they believed was a treasure chest. Elated, they left for the night, only to return the next morning to a nightmare. The shaft was flooded with 60 feet of seawater. When they tried to bail it out, the water level remained unchanged. They had inadvertently triggered the pit's legendary defense system, a complex network of flood tunnels ingeniously engineered to channel water from a nearby beach directly into the shaft the moment anyone breached its deepest chambers. This wasn't just a hiding place, it was a booby-trapped vault designed to protect its contents with a seemingly inexhaustible supply of seawater. For centuries, every attempt to bypass these tunnels has failed. Pumps are overwhelmed, coffer dams are breached, and new shafts dug to intercept the treasure chamber invariably flood as well. The pit itself seems to be a living, breathing adversary, actively defending its secret. Over the decades, the tantalizing clues pulled from the mud have only deepened the enigma. Perhaps the most famous is the so-called 40-foot stone, a slab of rock pulled up from a depth of 90 feet in the early 1800s, inscribed with a cryptic cipher. The stone itself has been lost to history, but according to transcriptions, the code was later translated to read, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Then there are the fragments of parchment found by a drill bit that pierced a chamber below the flood tunnel's parchment that could have been part of a legal document or a treasure map. Other drills brought up tiny links of a gold chain, and more recently, sophisticated sonar scans have shown what appear to be unnatural, man-made cavities and metal objects deep underground. Each of these finds is a siren's call, promising immeasurable wealth just out of reach, fueling the next wave of fortune seekers. And the cost of this pursuit has been staggering, measured not just in millions of dollars but in human lives. The quest for the Oak Island treasure has been a saga of financial ruin and tragic accidents. In 1861, the first recorded death occurred when a boiler on a pumping engine exploded. In the 20th century, multiple men have died in various cave-ins and mishaps. The modern-day Lagina brothers, whose efforts are documented on television, have invested a fortune into the search, confronting the same relentless flooding and engineering puzzles that defeated their predecessors. This long, painful history forces us to ask the most fundamental questions. Who could have possibly built this? The engineering sophistication required for the flood tunnels suggests a major, highly organized operation, far beyond the capabilities of casual pirates. Theories range from the Knights Templar hiding the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, to the British Navy secreting away the treasure of Louisbourg, or even Francis Bacon concealing proof that he was the true author of Shakespeare's plays. Yet, despite all the speculation and all the technology thrown at it, the core of the money pit remains inviolate. Its builders, their purpose, and the legendary treasure itself are locked away, protected by saltwater and stone, making Oak Island one of the world's most persistent and utterly unexplored historical riddles. While the hunt for physical treasure on Oak Island captivates with its tangible traps and tunnels, our next mystery exists entirely within the confines of a single, profoundly strange book. Housed today in Yale University's Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library, the Voynich Manuscript is arguably the world's most famous unreadable text. Its 240 vellum pages are filled from edge to edge with a flowing, unknown script, a cipher that has resisted every single attempt at decryption by the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and mathematicians for over a century. This isn't merely a text in a forgotten language. It is a writing system that appears completely alien, with its own unique alphabet and what seems to be grammatical structure, yet it matches no known language on Earth. Accompanying this impenetrable text are hundreds of illustrations that are somehow even more bewildering, depicting a world just familiar enough to be recognizable, but twisted into forms that defy logic. We see plants with impossible root structures and leaves that have never been documented by any botanist, nude women bathing in what appears to be a system of green, interconnected plumbing, and intricate astronomical charts showing constellations that do not align with our night sky. It is a window into a reality that we cannot access, a silent scream of information from a mind or a culture that remains utterly lost to us. Theories regarding its origin are as varied and fascinating as the manuscript's own bizarre content, each one attempting to crack a puzzle that lacks a definitive key. One prominent school of thought suggests it is a genuine, encoded text containing profound, perhaps even dangerous, knowledge. Proponents of this view argue it could be the work of a medieval proto-scientist, recording herbal and astronomical discoveries too advanced for his time, and therefore written in a complex cipher to protect himself from accusations of heresy. Others have speculated it represents a lost language, perhaps a pre-Indo-European tongue, or even an artificial language created for philosophical purposes. Then there is the hoax theory, which posits that the manuscript is an elaborate and meaningless fabrication, created by a clever forger like the infamous Edward Kelly to sell a wonderful book of secrets to a wealthy, gullible patron like Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II. Modern statistical analyses of the text show patterns consistent with a natural language, which argues against a simple hoax. Yet the possibility remains that a brilliant con artist of the 15th or 16th century devised a grammatically consistent nonsense language, a feat that would be astonishing in its own right. Most recently, some scholars have suggested it could be a work of Proto-Asemic writing, a form of artistic expression meant to evoke the idea of a text without containing any literal meaning, a visual meditation on the nature of knowledge itself. But beneath the debate over its content lies a more fundamental and perhaps more haunting geographical mystery: the location of its creation. The very library or scriptorium where this book was painstakingly penned and illustrated is one of history's great unsolved location-based puzzles. Carbon dating places the vellum between 1404 and 1438, but that only tells us when the animal lived, not when the ink was applied. The art style offers conflicting clues. Some illustrations resemble German or Italian medical herbals, while the astrological sections have features that could be Central European. Who commissioned this work? For whom was this labyrinth of unreadable text intended? Was it produced in the isolated study of a lone, eccentric genius far from the intellectual centers of the world? Or was it the product of a secretive scriptorium operating under the patronage of a nobleman or a secret society, its scribes copying a text whose meaning was known only to a select few? The materials, the vellum, the inks, could theoretically be traced, but they are frustratingly common for the period, offering no unique fingerprint to pinpoint an origin. The manuscript emerges into the historical record definitively only in the 17th century, already a mystery. Its journey before that, the path it took from its creator's desk into the hands of Emperor Rudolf, is a complete blank. The room where a person sat day after day, drawing unidentifiable plants and charting foreign stars, is a location as lost as Atlantis, its walls holding the echo of a secret we may never learn. The Voynich Manuscript is therefore a double mystery, an intellectual lockbox with no key and a ghost of a place, a silent workshop whose location is hidden as effectively as the meaning of the words its anonymous author so carefully wrote. Leaving behind the cryptic pages of the Voynich Manuscript, we now cross the Atlantic to the misty shores of a new world, where a different kind of disappearance has haunted the American narrative for centuries. The story of the lost Roanoke Colony is a foundational American mystery, a chilling tale of a community that simply vanished, leaving behind a single cryptic word as their only farewell. The saga began as an ambitious English endeavor. In 1587, a group of about 115 men, women, and children, led by Governor John White, established a settlement on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. The situation was precarious from the start, with tensions simmering with local Native American tribes and supplies running dangerously low. Just months after their arrival, the colonists persuaded Governor White to sail back to England to plead for more support and provisions. His departure was fraught with anxiety. He was leaving behind his own daughter, Elena, and his newborn granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. What should have been a brief resupply mission turned into an agonizing 3-year ordeal. White's return was blocked by the outbreak of the Anglo-Spanish War, with every English ship commandeered to fight the Spanish Armada. He was trapped, powerless, while his family and fledgling colony waited in an increasingly hostile wilderness. When Governor White finally managed to secure passage and set foot back on Roanoke Island in 1590, he was met with a silence more deafening than any storm. The settlement was completely abandoned but not destroyed. The houses had been carefully dismantled, suggesting a planned, orderly departure rather than a panicked flight from an attack. There were no crosses carved, a pre-arranged distress signal meant to indicate the colonists had been in grave danger. The only clue was a single word carved into a fort post, Croatoan. A second carving, the letters Crow, were found on a nearby tree. To White, this was both a message and a mystery. Before he had left, he had specifically instructed the colonists that if they were forced to move, they should carve the name of their destination into a tree or post. If they were in distress, they were to add a Maltese cross above it. The word Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, home to a tribe of the same name who had been generally friendly to the English. The absence of a cross was a deliberate signal that they had left voluntarily and were not under immediate threat. Yet, when White tried to sail to Croatoan Island to find them, a massive storm blew his ships off course, forcing him to abandon the search and return to England, his heart broken and the fate of the colonists, including his own family, forever shrouded in uncertainty. Theories about what truly happened to the lost colonists have multiplied over the centuries, each one a compelling narrative but ultimately lacking definitive proof. The most widely accepted theory is that the colonists, facing starvation and isolation, simply integrated with the local Croatoan people, also known as the Hatteras. This is supported by later reports from English explorers in the following decades. In the early 1600s, Jamestown settlers heard accounts from various Powhatan tribes of gray-eyed, fair-skinned people living in native villages to the south. One particularly compelling report came from a man named Matchumps, who told Jamestown leader William Strachey that a group of white people at the town of Okanahonan had built stone houses and lived under the protection of a chief. Another account from John Smith mentioned a boy with yellow hair sighted among the natives. These persistent rumors suggest a slow cultural assimilation over generations, a story of survival rather than massacre. Other, more tragic theories posit that the colony was wiped out by a devastating disease, a Spanish raid from their Florida colonies, or a violent conflict with the neighboring Secotan tribe. Some have even suggested a desperate, failed attempt to sail back to England in small boats, leading to their loss at sea. But the core of the mystery, the reason Roanoke remains so profoundly unexplored, lies not in the what, but in the where. We know where they started, on Roanoke Island. We know where they said they were going, Croatoan. But the ultimate destination of those 115 souls, the specific plot of land where they built their new homes, raised families, and lived out their lives, has never been found. The Croatoan carving was a starting point, not an ending. Did they settle on the island itself and become the lost tribe that later explorers sought? Or did they use it as a waypoint before moving further inland, perhaps up the Albemarle Sound, to live among other tribes? Modern archaeological efforts have turned up tantalizing clues, including a 16th-century English signet ring and pieces of European pottery found on Hatteras Island, which was historically Croatoan. More recently, a site known as Site X further inland has yielded fragments of Surrey-Hampshire border pottery, a type used by the Roanoke colonists. Yet, no concentrated burial ground, no foundational remains of a small English-style village, and no single, definitive artifact that can be conclusively linked to a specific colonist has ever been unearthed. The final chapter of the Roanoke story is not written in history books, but somewhere beneath the sandy soil and dense forests of the North Carolina coastline. It is a silent settlement, a ghost village whose location is the true and final secret of America's oldest unsolved mystery. From the vanished settlers of the New World, we venture now into the vast, windswept steppes of Central Asia, to a secret so fiercely guarded that its keepers committed unimaginable acts to ensure it would never be found. This is the quest for the tomb of Genghis Khan, the legendary founder of the Mongol Empire, a man who forged history's largest contiguous land empire through sheer force of will. Yet, for a figure of such colossal historical presence, his final resting place is a profound absence, a silence that echoes across the centuries. According to the accounts chronicled in the secret history of the Mongols after his death in 1227, his loyal followers carried his body on a long, mournful journey back to his homeland. The legends surrounding this procession are as chilling as they are effective. It is said that to erase all trace of their path, the funeral escort killed every single person they encountered along the way, creating a gruesome trail of silence. Then, upon reaching the sacred mountain of Berkhan-Koldan, the heart of Genghis Khan's personal spiritual world, they performed the final act of concealment. They diverted the waters of a river to flow over his grave, burying him in a stone-lined chamber beneath the riverbed before allowing the waters to rush back, forever sealing the tomb from the world. To complete the erasure, the soldiers who carried out this task were themselves executed, and then the executioners were in turn killed, ensuring that no living soul could ever betray the location. This was not merely a burial, it was the deliberate creation of a historical black hole. The immense cultural and spiritual significance of this lost tomb for the Mongolian people cannot be overstated, and it is this deep reverence that forms the most powerful barrier to its discovery. For many modern Mongols, Genghis Khan is not just a historical figure, he is a near-sacred father of the nation, and his tomb is considered a holy site, a final sanctuary that must not be disturbed. The belief is that the peace of the great Khan, and by extension the fortune of the nation itself, depends on his rest remaining eternal and uninterrupted. This has led to strong opposition to any invasive archaeological digging. The fear is not just of disrespect, but of potentially unleashing a curse said to protect the tomb, a belief that has been reinforced by stories of failed expeditions meeting with misfortune. In the early 20th century, a Soviet-led expedition allegedly located a suspicious site in the Khentai province, only to have their camp destroyed by a sudden, violent storm, leading the superstitious locals and even some team members to believe they had triggered the Khan's wrath. This cultural context means that the search is not simply a technical challenge. It is a delicate negotiation with the soul of a nation, where the desire for historical knowledge must be weighed against the risk of profound spiritual desecration. Despite these powerful taboos, the allure of solving one of archaeology's ultimate cold cases has spurred modern efforts that rely on non-invasive high technology. In recent decades, projects like the one led by Maury Kravitz and later supported by figures such as Albert Lin have turned to satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar to scan the vast landscapes of the Khentai Mountains from afar. The goal is to identify subtle, unnatural anomalies patterns in the vegetation or underground structures that could hint at a man-made tomb without ever breaking the soil. One promising theory suggests that the tomb might not be a standalone monument, but part of a larger royal necropolis, the Ikkorig, or Great Taboo, a forbidden zone that was strictly off-limits for centuries. This area, encompassing the sacred Berkhan-Koldan, was patrolled for generations by a special warrior tribe, the Uriankai, who had orders to kill any intruder. Even within this forbidden territory, the exact spot remains a mystery. The sheer scale of the search area, combined with 800 years of natural erosion and the deliberate lack of any surface marker, makes the task akin to finding a single, specific needle in a mountain range-sized haystack. Therefore, the tomb of Genghis Khan stands as a unique kind of unexplored location. Unlike a sunken city or a booby-trapped pit, its inaccessibility is not just a matter of geography or engineering, but of will. It exists at the tense intersection of historical curiosity and living faith. We may, in fact, already possess the technology to pinpoint its location with reasonable certainty, but the true exploration, the physical uncovering, remains ethically and culturally forbidden. This transforms the mystery from an archaeological puzzle into a philosophical one. Is some knowledge too sacred to pursue? Should the final wish of a world conqueror, enforced by a river and a massacre, be honored even centuries later? For now, the answer on the Mongolian steppe appears to be yes. The great Khan continues his eternal rest, not in a grand mausoleum for the world to see, but in the quiet heart of a landscape he loved, his secret guarded as much by the enduring respect of his people as by the ancient swords of his funeral guard. From the windswept Mongolian steppes, we now travel to the sun-scorched sands of the Giza Plateau, to a structure so iconic we often forget how much of it remains a secret. The Great Pyramid has stood for over 4,500 years, a testament to human ambition that has been studied, measured, and explored for centuries. We thought we knew its layout, the ascending and descending passages, the grand cavernous king's chamber with its granite sarcophagus, and the lower, more modest queen's chamber. For a long time, it seemed the final word on its internal structure had been written. But then, in recent years, a quiet revolution in particle physics began to reveal that this ancient wonder has been keeping astonishing secrets right under our noses. Using a technique called muon tomography, scientists have peered deep into the pyramid's heart without moving a single stone, and what they have found challenges everything we assumed about this ancient marvel. Muon tomography sounds like science fiction, but it provides a powerful X-ray vision capable of seeing through hundreds of feet of solid stone. It works by detecting muons, subatomic particles that are constantly raining down from the Earth's atmosphere. These particles pass through empty space easily but are absorbed or deflected by dense materials. By placing special muon-detecting plates inside the pyramid and around its base, researchers from the Scan Pyramids project could map where these particles passed through unimpeded, revealing unexpected voids within the monument's dense core. The first major discovery, announced in 2017, was a massive void situated directly above the Grand Gallery, now dubbed the Scan Pyramids Big Void. This chamber is enormous, measuring roughly 100 feet long, with a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself. Its purpose is a complete mystery. Then, further scans suggested another, smaller void behind the chevron-shaped stones on the pyramid's north face, hinting at a potential corridor or chamber that was deliberately concealed by the original builders. These aren't just minor gaps in the masonry, they are structured, significant spaces that were clearly part of the pyramid's original design, yet were so effectively hidden that they escaped notice for millennia. To appreciate the profound implications of these hidden voids, we must first consider the spaces we thought we understood. The Grand Gallery itself is an architectural marvel, a soaring, corbelled passageway that ascends dramatically into the pyramid's core. It feels like a processional way, a path fit for a pharaoh's final journey, leading to the king's chamber. Yet the king's chamber is surprisingly austere, containing only a single, lidless granite sarcophagus. There are no hieroglyphs, no treasures, no obvious signs of its sacred purpose. Then there is the so-called Queen's Chamber, a misnomer given by early Arab explorers. This room, located lower in the pyramid, is even more enigmatic. It contains a niche in the wall that once held a statue, perhaps, and it features two narrow, mysterious air shafts that don't actually open to the outside air. For centuries, these known chambers have fueled debate. Was the pyramid simply a tomb, or was it something more, an astronomical observatory, a giant energy generator, or a repository of sacred knowledge? The discovery of new, large, and completely inaccessible spaces reignites all these theories with fresh intensity. So what could possibly be sealed away in these pristine, unexplored spaces? The most tantalizing possibility is that one of these voids is the true burial chamber of Pharaoh Khufu, and that his sarcophagus, along with the funerary goods that were meant to accompany him to the afterlife, remain untouched within. The king's chamber, in this scenario, could have been a decoy, an elaborate false tomb designed to confuse grave robbers. This would explain why no mummy has ever been found in the pyramid, and why the sarcophagus in the king's chamber was empty when it was first opened. Alternatively, these chambers might not hold a body at all, but something even more precious to the ancient Egyptians' knowledge. Imagine sealed containers holding papyrus scrolls, perhaps the complete, lost works of ancient Egyptian science, mathematics, and astronomy, or detailed accounts of how the pyramid was actually built. They could contain ritual objects, sacred symbols made of precious materials, or maps of the stars as the ancients saw them. The contents of these chambers have the potential to rewrite entire chapters of early human history. The very existence of these voids forces a humbling reassessment of ancient Egyptian engineering. We have long marveled at the precision with which the pyramids were built, but the discovery of major, hidden internal structures suggests a level of architectural sophistication we never credited them with. It implies that the pyramid's designers were not just master stoneworkers, but brilliant spatial planners who understood how to conceal entire chambers within a mass of stone, ensuring their secrets would be protected by the monument's very immensity. The challenge now is how to explore these spaces without causing damage. Drilling even a small borehole to insert a camera is a contentious proposition, as it would involve invading a structure that has remained intact for 45 centuries. Any such endeavor must be undertaken with the utmost care and respect, a collaboration between archaeologists, physicists, and engineers. The Great Pyramid, it turns out, is not a solved puzzle but a living, breathing mystery. Its deepest secrets are still held within its stone heart, waiting in the darkness for the day when we can finally peer inside and meet the gaze of the ancients across the gulf of time. Now, let us set aside the silent, stone-clad riddles of the pyramids and journey to the arid, sun-blasted landscape of the Judean Desert, where a different kind of mystery was discovered, not carved in stone but etched onto metal. Among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls found in the mid-20th century, one artifact stood out as utterly unique. It wasn't a fragile piece of parchment containing biblical texts or sectarian commentaries. It was the Copper Scroll, and it was unlike anything the scholars had ever seen. Discovered in 1952 in a cave near the ancient settlement of Qumran, this scroll was made of thin, corroded copper, so brittle that it had to be carefully cut into strips to be read. The moment its text was translated, it sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. This was not a spiritual treatise. It was what appears to be a straightforward, matter-of-fact inventory of hidden treasure, listing unimaginable wealth in precise, almost bureaucratic detail. The contents of the scroll are staggering, describing a hoard that would be worth hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars in today's terms. It lists over 60 different caches of gold and silver, along with precious perfumes and scrolls themselves hidden at various locations. The quantities are not vague, they are meticulously recorded in talents, a unit of weight. We read of specific amounts like 70 talents of silver in one location and 17 talents of gold in another. When you add it all up, the total is mind-boggling, approximately 128 tons of gold and silver. To put that in perspective, this would represent a significant portion of the entire treasure of the ancient kingdom of Judah, a fortune so vast it seems to belong to legend. But the scroll presents it not as a myth, but as a simple accounting of fact, a ledger of loot waiting to be reclaimed. Yet, claiming this treasure has proven to be an impossible task, primarily because of the maddeningly cryptic nature of the directions given for its retrieval. The scroll reads like a treasure map written by a paranoid accountant. It doesn't say, "Go to the big rock by the river." Instead, it gives instructions such as, "In the ruin that is in the valley, dig 4 cubits and you will find 22 talents of silver," or "In the cistern under the eastern wall, in the northern niche, dig 3 cubits. The descriptions rely on landmarks that were common 2,000 years ago but are now lost to time: a specific ruin, a particular cistern, a staircase, or a water channel. It consistently references a place called the Solomon's Canal and another spot called the Monument of Absalom, locations whose ancient names and exact positions have been completely erased by centuries of erosion, earthquake, and human settlement. The scroll is a set of perfect directions to a world that no longer exists, a set of coordinates for a map that has been thrown away. This has led to a fierce and enduring debate among scholars. Is the Copper Scroll a genuine inventory of a real treasure, or is it a piece of folklore, a religious allegory? Those who believe it is real often connect its contents to the Great Jewish Revolt against the Romans in the 1st century. The theory goes that before the Roman legions sacked Jerusalem and destroyed the Second Temple in the year 70, priests managed to secret away the vast temple treasury and other communal wealth, hiding it in dozens of locations across the harsh desert for safekeeping. The Copper Scroll, then, would be the official record of this desperate, last-ditch effort to preserve their sacred wealth. The fact that it was written on durable copper, not perishable parchment, supports this idea. This was a record meant to last, a document for posterity. On the other hand, skeptics argue that the sheer scale of the treasure is simply too fantastic to be believed. They suggest it might be a work of fiction, a description of a legendary, idealized treasure from Jewish tradition, or perhaps even a cryptic religious text where the gold and silver are metaphors for spiritual wisdom. The very improbability of hiding and later losing such an immense fortune, they say, points toward a symbolic rather than a literal interpretation. But for the treasure hunters and archaeologists who have taken the scroll at its word, the search has been a story of tantalizing clues and ultimate frustration. Over the decades, numerous expeditions have scoured the Judean Desert, armed with the scroll's text and modern technology like ground-penetrating radar. They have dug at the bases of waterfalls, investigated ancient aqueducts, and scanned the floors of long dry cisterns. Some have claimed to find minor, circumstantial evidence, an old iron key, a few Roman coins, markings on a rock that might match a description. Yet, not a single one of the 64 caches has ever been conclusively found. The land itself has changed too much. The valley described might now be a featureless plain. The cistern may have collapsed and filled with sediment. Each failed expedition only deepens the mystery, proving that the treasure, if it ever existed, is protected by a far more effective security system than any booby trap, the relentless, erasing hand of time itself. The vaults described in the Copper Scroll therefore remain among the most definitively unexplored locations on our list. They are not sealed by stone or water, but by the shifting sands of history and the ambiguous intent of a text that continues to guard its secret, offering a king's ransom to anyone who can learn to read its landscape as well as its words. From the desert treasure maps that lead nowhere, we plunge now into the watery depths of the Mediterranean Sea, where an entire city lay forgotten for over a millennium. This is the legendary city of Heracleion, known to the ancient Egyptians as Thonis. For centuries, it was thought to be just a myth, a place mentioned by the Greek historian Herodotus and a few scattered references in ancient texts, a bustling, wealthy port that supposedly vanished beneath the waves. Its very existence was debated by scholars who wondered if it was merely a confused memory of another city. Then, in the year 2000, after years of painstaking survey work in the Abu Qir Bay off the coast of Egypt, French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudiot and his team made a discovery that stunned the world. Their eyes, peering through the murky water, were the first in 1,200 years to behold the colossal statues and sunken temples of a city that was, in fact, very real. What they found on the seafloor was not just a collection of ruins, but a breathtakingly preserved underwater museum. The scale of the discoveries is almost incomprehensible. They uncovered the remains of a grand temple dedicated to the god Amun-Jereb, a central pillar of the city's religious life. Giant statues of a pharaoh, a queen, and the Nile god Hapi, each standing over 16 feet tall, were found toppled but largely intact as if they had fallen in slow motion. A stunning black granite stele or decree stone was recovered, its inscriptions perfectly clear, providing a crucial link that confirmed this sunken site was indeed Thonis Heracleion. The findings didn't stop there. The silt had preserved the hulls of more than 60 ancient ships, a whole fleet entombed in the bay, offering an unparalleled snapshot of ancient naval architecture. They found gold coins, delicate jewelry, and countless ritual objects, all lying exactly where they had been dropped when the city was consumed by the sea. Each artifact was a silent witness to a sudden, catastrophic end. The central mystery, of course, is what caused this thriving metropolis to simply disappear. Heracleion was built on the unstable clay and silt of the Nile Delta, a region perpetually at war with the sea. The prevailing theory is that a perfect storm of natural disasters sealed its fate. A series of powerful earthquakes, possibly coupled with a tsunami, likely liquefied the unstable ground upon which the city was built. Imagine the streets suddenly turning to soup, the massive stone temples losing their foundations and tilting violently, and the weight of the grand buildings themselves causing the entire landmass to sink, all in a relatively short, terrifying period. The water would have rushed in, not as a gentle flood, but as a cataclysmic engulfment, swallowing the city and locking it in a cold, dark tomb of sediment. This sediment, while obscuring the city, also acted as a remarkable preservative, preventing wood from rotting and metal from corroding, creating a time capsule of immense historical value. Yet, for all the incredible finds, the truly tantalizing part of the Heracleion story is how much we haven't seen. The vast majority of the city, estimated to be over 90%, remains buried under layers of sand and silt. The explorations so far have been like carefully dusting off the cover of a massive, ancient book. We've seen the magnificent illustrations on the front, but we haven't yet been able to open it and read the pages inside. The deepest layers of the city, the foundations of the most important structures and the oldest quarters, are still completely unexplored. What lies beneath the main temple complex? Could there be royal tombs or hidden chambers containing the accumulated wealth of a city that controlled all trade entering Egypt from the Mediterranean? The potential for discovery is staggering. These deepest strata hold the secrets to the city's very origins and its political and economic peak, information that could rewrite our understanding of trade and cultural exchange in the ancient world. The sheer logistical challenge of excavating these deeper layers is what keeps them unexplored. Underwater archaeology is a slow, methodical, and incredibly expensive process. Each object must be meticulously documented in situ before it is carefully lifted, a process that can take days or even weeks for a single statue. The sediment that preserves the city also hides it, and excavating it without damaging the fragile ruins beneath requires suction dredges that work like underwater vacuum cleaners, moving at a glacial pace. Strong currents and poor visibility often reduce dive times to mere minutes. To fully uncover Heracleion would be a project spanning generations, requiring technology and resources on a scale we can barely imagine. So, while we have been granted a spectacular glimpse, the heart of Heracleion remains locked away, its most significant structures and the full story of its dramatic collapse still buried in the deep, dark silence of the sea, a submerged mystery waiting for future generations to finally bring its secrets to the surface. While the Mediterranean Sea swallowed Heracleion in a cataclysmic geological event, our next mystery was deliberately concealed by one of history's most feared and ruthless rulers, hidden away in a labyrinth of subterranean vaults beneath a modern capital city. This is the legendary Lost Library of Ivan the Terrible, a collection of ancient wisdom so priceless that its potential discovery would arguably be the greatest archaeological find of all time. The story begins not in Russia, but with the fall of Constantinople in 1453. As the Ottoman armies breached the walls of the Byzantine capital, the last emperors of the fading empire faced an unimaginable catastrophe. For 1,000 years, Constantinople had been the guardian of the classical world, its imperial library housing a vast treasury of knowledge from ancient Greece and Rome, original works by Plato and Aristotle, lost plays by Sophocles and Aeschylus, scientific treatises, and historical chronicles that had simply vanished from the rest of Europe. The legend insists that in the city's final days, these priceless manuscripts were smuggled out to safety, transported by ship across the Black Sea, and eventually making their way to Moscow, the new center of the Orthodox Christian world, which had styled itself as the Third Rome. It was there that they supposedly came into the possession of Ivan III, Ivan the Terrible's grandfather, through his marriage to Sophia Palaeologina, the niece of the last Byzantine emperor. This marriage was a monumental political union intended to cement Moscow's claim as the heir to Rome's spiritual legacy. The priceless library was said to be part of her dowry, a symbolic passing of the torch. The collection then fell to her grandson, Ivan the Terrible, a man of staggering contradictions. He was a deeply paranoid and violent tyrant, responsible for the reign of terror carried out by his oprichnina. Yet he was also a highly educated and devoutly religious scholar, fluent in several languages and possessing one of the largest personal libraries in Europe. He was precisely the kind of ruler who would understand the immense power contained in those ancient texts and would go to great lengths to protect them. According to persistent accounts from foreign diplomats and travelers to his court, Ivan would occasionally reference books from this secret collection, but he refused to show them to anyone, guarding them as his most valued state secret. And then, upon his death in 1584, the entire library vanished from all historical records as if it had never existed. The primary suspect for its hiding place is a location steeped in its own mystery, the network of secret tunnels and chambers beneath the Moscow Kremlin. For centuries, rumors have swirled of a vast subterranean world under the fortress, hidden repositories, torture chambers, and escape routes built by successive rulers. The most compelling theory places Ivan's library in a specially constructed, climate-controlled vault deep beneath the existing foundations, perhaps even below the water table, to protect the delicate parchment and papyrus from the elements. Other theories suggest it could be hidden within the walls of the Kremlin itself, or in a sealed chamber beneath the Alexander Garden. There are even fantastical tales of an entire underground city, the legendary Kitay-Gorod, with the library at its heart. The sheer scale of the Kremlin complex and the chaotic history of Moscow, with its many fires and reconstructions, mean that such a secret could easily have been built over and forgotten, waiting for a chance discovery. This tantalizing possibility has spurred numerous modern searches, blending historical detective work with cutting-edge technology. In the 1990s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a renewed fervor to locate the library. Expeditions used ground-penetrating radar to scan beneath the Kremlin's cathedrals and armory, identifying several mysterious voids and anomalies that could be man-made chambers. One of the most promising leads pointed to a hidden space beneath the Ascension Convent, but political and structural concerns prevented a full excavation. More recently, archaeologists using non-invasive methods have mapped extensive underground passages that do not appear on any official blueprints, confirming that the legends of a subterranean Kremlin are based in fact. However, each of these technological forays has hit a wall, both literal and figurative. The Kremlin remains the active nerve center of the Russian government, a highly sensitive site where extensive digging is simply not permitted. The potential risk of destabilizing the foundations of historic buildings like the Assumption Cathedral is too great, and the political will to authorize a definitive search has never materialized. Ultimately, the lost library of Ivan the Terrible stands as a ghost of knowledge, a collection that may hold the key to rediscovering entire swaths of our classical heritage. Its continued absence is what makes it one of history's most profound, unexplored locations. We are left with a haunting question. Did Ivan, in his final paranoid days, order the library to be walled up and the workers who built the tomb killed, ensuring its secret died with him? Or could the collection have been destroyed centuries ago in one of Moscow's great fires, its priceless contents turned to ash, leaving only the echo of its legend? Until someone is granted the unprecedented access and resources to conclusively solve this riddle, the library remains a shimmering mirage of historical possibility, a treasure of unimaginable intellectual wealth that lies in wait, silently challenging us from the deep darkness beneath the streets of Moscow. From the silent, submerged world of Heraclean and the politically charged vaults beneath Moscow, we now travel to a landscape that is brutally hot, starkly beautiful, and steeped in a legend of gold and death. The Superstition Mountains of Arizona rise from the desert like a fortress of jagged rock, a natural labyrinth that has guarded its most famous secret for over a century, the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. This is not a story of ancient kings or sunken cities, but a distinctly American saga of greed, obsession, and the unforgiving power of the wilderness. The legend centers on a German immigrant named Jacob Waltz, who, in the late 1800s, allegedly discovered a mother lode of gold so rich that he could simply pick up nuggets from the ground. Until his dying day in 1891, Waltz tantalized prospectors and treasure hunters with cryptic clues and occasional displays of incredibly high-grade gold ore, but he never revealed the mine's exact location. His final, delirious words to his caretaker, Julia Thomas, were a confusing mix of directions involving a landmark called the Weaver's Needle, a military trail, and a shadow that pointed the way at a specific time of day. These fragmented hints were just enough to ignite a fire that has burned for generations, a fire that has consumed fortunes and lives in equal measure. The terrain of the Superstition Mountains is itself the mine's most effective guardian. This is not a gentle, rolling landscape, but a volcanic nightmare of sheer cliffs, deep canyons, and razor-sharp plants. Summer temperatures routinely soar above 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the arid environment offers little respite or water. The mountains are a maze where one canyon looks almost identical to the next, and landmarks shift appearance dramatically with the changing angle of the sun. To venture in unprepared is to invite disaster, and many have. Since the 1890s, dozens of people have vanished within the superstitions, their fates often as mysterious as the mine they sought. Some are presumed to have fallen from cliffs or succumbed to dehydration. Others, however, are the subject of darker rumors, falling victim to the so-called Dutchman's curse, or even to foul play from rival treasure hunters fiercely protective of their own search areas. The most famous case is that of Adolf Ruth, who in 1931 entered the mountains with what he claimed was a genuine map from the Waltz family. His skull was later found with 2 bullet holes in it, miles from the rest of his skeleton. His story, and the stories of others who have died under strange circumstances, have woven a palpable aura of danger into the very air, a warning that the mountains do not give up their secrets lightly. Adding to the immense physical challenge is a bewildering web of conflicting maps, stories, and theories about the mine's true nature and location. Over the decades, countless maps have surfaced, many claiming to be copies of Waltz's original or drawn from the recollections of Julia Thomas. The problem is, no 2 maps are exactly alike. One might point to a specific canyon north of the Weaver's Needle, while another directs searchers to a complex system of trails to the south. Some researchers argue that Waltz's mine was not a traditional vertical shaft, but a horizontal tunnel, a cavote, left by much earlier Spanish miners from the 18th century. This theory ties the Lost Dutchman to the even older legend of the Peralta Massacre, where a family of Mexican miners was supposedly ambushed by Apaches while transporting gold out of the mountains. Proponents of this idea search for Spanish symbols carved into the rock: a horse, a priest, a dagger, believing they form a coded map. Other theories are even more speculative, suggesting the mine is located in a cave high on a cliff face, accessible only by rope, or that it lies in a small, hidden valley that is completely invisible from any of the surrounding peaks. This cacophony of clues has created a situation where every rock formation can be interpreted in multiple ways, and every searcher can find evidence to support their own personal theory, leading them deeper into the labyrinth and further from a consensus reality. So, does the Lost Dutchman's mine actually exist? Skeptics have long argued that Jacob Waltz was a clever conman who salted his gold from other, smaller claims, creating an elaborate legend to secure a comfortable retirement cared for by those who hope to inherit his secret. They point to geological surveys of the superstitions that show no evidence of a major gold vein matching Waltz's descriptions. Yet the true believers counter with powerful, tangible evidence. Throughout the 20th century and into the 21st, prospectors have occasionally emerged from the mountains with samples of gold ore of a spectacularly rich quality, known as bonanza grade, identical to the ore Waltz himself possessed. These finds are never from the same location twice, and the individuals who find them are invariably unable to relocate the source, as if the mountains themselves are permitting a fleeting glimpse of their treasure only to hide it again. This cycle of tantalizing discovery and immediate loss is what keeps the legend alive and potent. The mine, therefore, remains one of America's most definitively unexplored sites. It is not lost in the sense of being underwater or buried under a city. It is hidden in plain sight, its entrance likely passed by hundreds of hikers each year who simply do not know how to see it. It is a secret woven into the rock and shadow of the Superstition Mountains, a puzzle whose solution requires not just a map, but an understanding of the land, the history, and the mind of the man who started it all, a secret that the desert seems determined to keep forever. Our journey now takes us from the harsh American desert to the sun-bleached coast of Egypt, where the final act of one of history's greatest love stories unfolded, and where its ultimate secret still lies hidden. We search for the lost tomb of Cleopatra VII, the last active pharaoh of Ptolemaic Egypt, and her Roman lover, the general Mark Antony. Following their devastating defeat at the Battle of Actium by the forces of Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, the couple retreated to Alexandria. There, facing certain capture and humiliation, they chose to die by their own hands, Antony falling on his sword after a false report of Cleopatra's death, and Cleopatra herself succumbing to the venom of an asp. But their dramatic deaths are only the beginning of the mystery. It is the fate of their bodies that has captivated historians and archaeologists for 2,000 years. The Roman historian Plutarch provides the most tantalizing clue, writing that Octavian, upon capturing the city, allowed the two lovers to be buried together in a tomb that Cleopatra was already having constructed. He even notes that Octavian visited the tomb himself and gave permission for their bodies to be entombed within. Then the historical record falls silent. The location of this magnificent mausoleum, a site that surely would have been one of the wonders of the ancient world, simply vanished. Ancient sources offer a few precious hints about what this royal tomb might have contained and where it could be. Plutarch describes it as being situated near a temple of the goddess Isis, whom Cleopatra identified with closely. Another key detail is that it was part of Cleopatra's own palace complex within Alexandria, a structure that extended to the sea. The Greek historian Strabo, writing around the time of Cleopatra's death, mentions royal tombs in the palace district, but he does not single hers out. We can imagine a grand, towering structure filled with the unimaginable wealth of the Ptolemaic dynasty, gold, jewels, art, and the sacred regalia of the pharaohs. It would have been a monument designed not just for burial, but for eternal remembrance, a final, defiant statement of their power and their legendary love. Yet, the great city of Alexandria has been reshaped by earthquakes, tsunamis, and centuries of rebuilding. Much of the ancient royal quarter, including Cleopatra's palace, now lies submerged beneath the modern harbor, swallowed by the sea just like the city of Heracleion. This complicates the search immensely, suggesting the tomb could be either deep underwater or buried somewhere beneath the sprawling modern metropolis, lost under layers of later Roman, Byzantine, and Arabic construction. This geographical puzzle has led one of the most prominent modern searches to focus on a site about 30 miles west of ancient Alexandria, the temple complex of Taposiris Magna. For over a decade, a team led by Dominican archaeologist Kathleen Martinez has been excavating this sprawling site, driven by a compelling theory. Martinez believes that Cleopatra, knowing her defeat was imminent and fearing Octavian's vengeance, would not have chosen a tomb within the city he was about to capture. Instead, she theorizes that the queen would have selected a remote, sacred site associated with the god Osiris, the Egyptian lord of the underworld and the husband of Isis. For Cleopatra, joining her lover in a temple dedicated to Osiris would have been a powerful symbolic act, uniting them in the afterlife just as Isis and Osiris were reunited. The excavations at Taposiris Magna have yielded a series of breathtaking finds that make this theory increasingly plausible. Archaeologists have discovered a vast, undisturbed necropolis containing many Greco-Roman-style mummies, some with gold-covered tongues, suggesting this was a prestigious burial ground for the highest nobility. They have unearthed coins bearing the image of Cleopatra, a stunning alabaster head of a statue believed to represent her, and a network of tunnels leading deep underground, pointing toward a possible, still-hidden royal burial chamber. However, the search is fraught with debate and immense difficulty. Many mainstream Egyptologists remain skeptical, arguing that the overwhelming weight of historical evidence points to a tomb within Alexandria itself. They contend that a queen of Cleopatra's stature in a time of crisis would have wanted to be buried with her Ptolemaic ancestors in the royal necropolis that Strabo described. The underwater archaeology in Alexandria's harbor is a monumental task, and the urban archaeology beneath the modern city is a logistical nightmare, requiring the cooperation of countless property owners and navigating a living, breathing urban center. Meanwhile, the work at Taposiris Magna continues, with each new season bringing both frustration and hope. The team has used advanced radar technology that has detected several tantalizing voids and chambers deep beneath the temple's main court, spaces that have yet to be reached. The central challenge is the sheer scale of the site and the painstaking, slow process of excavation, where a single misstep could cause a collapse and destroy the very thing they seek. Ultimately, the tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony represents a different kind of mystery from a booby-trapped vault or a sunken city. It is the search for a specific, intimate space that holds the physical remains of two people who shaped the course of Western history. Its discovery would be unprecedented, offering not just untold golden treasure, but a direct connection to their final moments and the opportunity to study their remains, potentially confirming the cause of their deaths and giving us a true likeness of Cleopatra herself. The emotional and historical weight of finding this tomb is immeasurable. It remains the last, unread chapter of their epic story, a silent chamber waiting somewhere along the Egyptian coast, either beneath the busy streets of Alexandria, under the silt of the Mediterranean Sea, or in the sacred darkness of a remote temple, holding its royal secrets safe until the day the sand and stone finally give up their most famous queen. Beneath the sun-drenched streets and bustling piazzas of modern Rome lies another city, a city of the dead, a labyrinth of shadows that stretches for hundreds of miles in a network so vast that its full scale may never be known. These are the catacombs of Rome, a subterranean world where early Christians, Jews, and even pre-Christian Romans carved out countless burial niches in the soft volcanic rock known as tuff. While tourists today can walk through carefully restored and electrically lit passages in places like the catacombs of San Callisto or San Sebastiano, these public routes represent just a fraction of the whole. They are the curated hallways of a museum whose deepest, darkest wings have been sealed for centuries, closed off due to the ever-present danger of collapse or simply lost to time, their entrances hidden by landslides or built over by the expanding city above. These forgotten sections are not merely empty tunnels, they are sealed time capsules holding the potential to rewrite our understanding of the ancient world's spiritual transformation. The primary reason so much of this underground world remains a mystery is the sheer, unnerving peril of exploration. Unlike the solid stone of the pyramids, the tough rock of the catacombs is friable and unstable. Passages can narrow suddenly into choke points filled with rubble, and centuries of moisture seepage have weakened ceilings and support pillars. An unsuspecting step can dislodge a rock that triggers a chain reaction, leading to a tunnel collapse that could entomb an explorer forever. Furthermore, many of the deeper levels are prone to flooding or have accumulated dangerous concentrations of gases like radon or carbon dioxide, creating invisible, lethal traps. Modern archaeologists don't just wander into these sealed zones with a torch. They use ground-penetrating radar to map the voids and robotic probes to scout ahead before any human enters, a slow and meticulous process that has only scratched the surface of what lies beyond the safety barriers. It's a physically hostile environment where the very walls seem to resist intrusion, protecting their secrets with the constant threat of burial. What could possibly be worth such risk hidden in this perpetual darkness? The answer lies in the unparalleled artistic and historical treasures that almost certainly await discovery. The known catacombs are famous for their early Christian symbols: the fish, the anchor, the Good Shepherd painted on the walls or carved into sarcophagi. But the sealed sections could hold far more. Imagine stumbling upon a chamber with a complete, vibrant fresco cycle depicting a lost gospel or a narrative of early Christian martyrdom that history has forgotten. Art that has never been exposed to light or polluted air, preserved in pristine condition. There is also the enduring, electrifying possibility of finding the lost burial chambers of venerated saints or martyrs from the first centuries after Christ. While major figures like Saints Peter and Paul were moved to grand basilicas above ground, countless other early saints were interred in the catacombs, their specific loculi or burial niches, lost during periods of persecution when markers were removed for safety. To find one of these tombs would be a discovery of immense religious and archaeological significance. But the mystery goes deeper than just Christian history, reaching back into the pagan world that preceded it. Some scholars theorize that the earliest parts of the catacomb network may not have been Christian at all, but were originally pagan burial sites or even secret meeting places for mystery cults dedicated to gods like Mithras or Isis. It's possible that the first Christians simply expanded upon these existing underground labyrinths, and that deep within the sealed sections, one could find altars to Mithras hidden behind a false wall, or chambers adorned with fading paintings of Roman deities, creating a palimpsest of faiths layered one upon the other. Each sealed tunnel is a potential gateway to a forgotten spiritual landscape, a hidden chapter in the story of how the classical world slowly gave way to the age of Christianity. This makes the unexplored catacombs a unique historical archive, one where the transition from one world to the next is literally carved into the rock, waiting for a cautious light to finally illuminate its secrets. Our journey now plunges from the structured labyrinths beneath Rome into the chaotic, living heart of the Amazon rainforest, a green ocean where a different kind of mystery consumed one of the 20th century's most determined explorers. This is the quest for the lost city of Z, a legendary metropolis rumored to be hidden deep within the jungle, a place of immense wealth and advanced culture that defied every European assumption about the Amazon as a pristine wilderness. The man whose name is forever tied to this enigma is Lieutenant Colonel Percy Fawcett, a British explorer who was anything but a mere treasure hunter. Fawcett was a seasoned surveyor and a man of his time, yet he possessed a unique respect for the jungle and its indigenous peoples, earning him a reputation for surviving where others perished. It was during his many mapping expeditions for the Royal Geographical Society that he first began to piece together his grand theory. He discovered pottery shards in unlikely places, heard persistent legends from various tribes about a great, shining city, and studied fragmentary historical documents, including a 17th-century Portuguese manuscript known as Manuscript 512, which described a fabulously wealthy city with silver towers discovered by Bandeirante explorers in the deep jungle. Fawcett became utterly convinced that these clues all pointed to the same place, a sophisticated civilization he called simply Z, the last remnant of a continent spanning Atlantean-like culture he believed had once existed in South America. Fawcett's final expedition in 1925 was meticulously planned and shrouded in deliberate secrecy, for he feared others would follow and plunder the city's sacred knowledge. He was not seeking gold in the crude sense. He was after proof of his theory, what he called the central mystery of South America. He embarked with just two companions, his eldest son, Jack, and Jack's lifelong friend, Rolly Rimmel. This small, lightly equipped party was a calculated decision. Fawcett believed a large team would be seen as hostile and would struggle to find food. His last known communication, dispatched back through a group of native porters, was a letter sent from a place called Dead Horse Camp. In it, he wrote with unshakable optimism, "We hope to get through this region in a few days. You need have no fear of any failure." It was the last the outside world ever heard from them. The three men simply walked into the vast, unmapped wilderness and vanished, becoming a mystery as enduring as the city they sought. The disappearance triggered one of the most extensive manhunts in exploration history, a tragic sequence of rescue missions that often ended in their own disappearances and deaths. Over the next century, more than 100 explorers would perish in the green hell of the Mato Grosso region, all trying to solve the riddle of what happened to Fawcett. Some were lost to disease, others to hostile tribes, and some simply vanished without a trace. This grim toll gave the story a dark, cautionary aura, a legend that the jungle itself would claim any who dared to seek its deepest secret. Theories about Fawcett's fate blossomed in the vacuum of facts. Had he and his party succumbed to malaria or starvation? Were they killed by a jaguar or a poisonous snake? The more dramatic stories suggested they were killed by a hostile indigenous tribe. Others spun tales that Fawcett had actually found his city and chosen to remain there, living out his days as a white god among its people, or that he had stumbled upon a portal to another dimension. The complete lack of any definitive evidence, no graves, no equipment, no bones, allowed the myth to grow into an obsession for generations of adventurers. For decades, the academic establishment largely dismissed Fawcett's quest as the delusion of a romantic, pointing to the apparent lack of large-scale, complex societies in the Amazon basin. The prevailing view was that the soil was too poor to support the intensive agriculture needed for a city, and that the indigenous peoples lived in small, scattered tribes. This consensus, however, has been completely upended in the 21st century by a revolutionary technology, LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. By firing millions of laser pulses from an aircraft and measuring their return, LiDAR can effectively see through the dense forest canopy to map the ground beneath. What it has revealed is nothing short of paradigm-shattering. Vast, previously unknown networks of roads, causeways, plazas, and complex earthworks have been discovered across the Amazon, evidence of sophisticated, interconnected societies that supported populations numbering in the millions. We now know that the pre-Columbian Amazon was not a virgin wilderness, but a heavily managed, engineered landscape, home to populous chiefdoms and complex cultures that were largely wiped out by European diseases before explorers ever laid eyes on them. This new evidence vindicates the core of Fawcett's belief that a significant civilization existed in the Amazon, but it also fundamentally changes the nature of the search for the city of Z. The mystery is no longer whether complex societies existed, but whether we can ever match the specific, legendary city from Fawcett's imagination to one of these newly discovered archaeological sites. LiDAR reveals the outlines of a city, but it cannot tell us its name or confirm the tales of silver towers that Fawcett read about in Manuscript 512. The true, unexplored element is not the general presence of ancient cities, but the specific location and identity of the one that captured Fawcett's soul and ultimately cost him his life. His city of Z was a singular place, loaded with a particular mythical and personal significance that may not correspond to any one physical ruin we can point to today. The jungle has given up the general secret of its populated past, but it continues to guard the particular secret that drove one man to walk into its heart and never return. The lost city Percy Fawcett sought remains as elusive as his own final resting place, a phantom woven from historical fragments, indigenous lore, and one man's unyielding dream, forever hidden just beyond the next bend in the river. For all the wonders we have uncovered in the ancient world, perhaps the most astonishing still lies completely untouched, protected not by traps or water, but by a conscious choice rooted in both profound respect and stark pragmatism. In the central Chinese province of Shaanxi, beneath a vast man-made mound of earth that has stood for over 2,000 years, sleeps the founder of China itself, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. The world knows him through his most famous legacy, the Terracotta Army, a stunning collection of thousands of life-sized clay soldiers discovered by farmers in 1974. But these formidable figures, for all their grandeur, are merely the outer guardians, the spiritual perimeter force stationed in pits around the main tomb. They protect the true prize, the heart of the entire complex, the emperor's underground palace, a sealed universe that historical records describe in almost mythical terms, and one that modern science suggests may be perfectly preserved, waiting in the dark. Our most vivid window into what might lie within comes from the great historian Sima Qian, writing about a century after the emperor's death in 210 B. See, his account is not of a simple burial chamber, but of a miniature, subterranean kingdom constructed to serve the emperor for all eternity. He describes a vast cavern where the ceiling was inlaid with pearls to simulate the stars and constellations of the night sky, creating a celestial map for the emperor's soul to navigate. Below this heavenly dome, the geography of his empire was recreated with models of palaces and towers, and most incredibly, rivers and oceans made not of water, but of shimmering, liquid mercury, mechanically circulated to flow perpetually. The text even notes that crossbow traps were set to fire automatically at any intruder, a final, deadly defense for an emperor paranoid about his safety even in the afterlife. The body of Qin Shi Huang was said to be placed within a bronze sarcophagus, surrounded by the untold treasures and artifacts that had been his in life, all illuminated by candles made of whale oil, believed to burn for an impossibly long time. For centuries, these descriptions were read as symbolic or exaggerated folklore, the kind of epic tale told about mighty rulers. Modern science, however, has delivered a stunning revelation that forces us to take Sima Qian's words with the utmost seriousness. Beginning in the 1980s, Chinese archaeologists began conducting soil samples on and around the tomb mound, which rises over 250 feet above the surrounding plain. What they found was both electrifying and alarming. The mercury levels in the soil were significantly higher than those in the surrounding area, in some places up to 100 times the normal background level. This pattern wasn't random. The elevated mercury traces seemed to outline a specific, sprawling underground area, and their distribution even vaguely mirrored the course of major rivers in ancient China. This scientific evidence is nothing short of breathtaking. It strongly suggests that the accounts of mercury rivers are not mere legend, but a factual report of the tomb's incredible contents. This discovery, however, creates an immense dilemma. Mercury is, of course, highly toxic. To breach the tomb would not only risk damaging priceless, organic artifacts that have been sealed in a stable environment for millennia, but it would also expose archaeologists to a deadly, vaporized poison and potentially release significant contamination into the local environment. The potential reward of unparalleled discovery is balanced against a very real and present danger. This is the core reason the Chinese government has maintained a strict policy of non-excavation for the main tomb mound. It's a decision born of a painful lesson learned from the Terracotta Army themselves. When those warriors were first unearthed, they were covered in vibrant, brilliantly preserved paint. Upon exposure to the air, the pigment flaked and faded within minutes, turning the colorful soldiers into the muted, earthen figures we see today. The loss was irreversible. The fear is that the same fate, or one far worse, awaits the contents of the central tomb. The environment inside has been hermetically sealed for 22 centuries. Any sudden change in temperature, humidity, or air composition could cause silks to disintegrate, wooden structures to crumble to dust, and lacquerware to instantly warp and split. The technology to safely excavate and stabilize such a vast, delicate, and toxic environment simply does not exist yet. It requires a level of archaeological precision and environmental control that is beyond our current capabilities. The government's stance is therefore one of patient stewardship, to protect the tomb for future generations who may possess the tools to open it without destroying its contents. So we are left with a magnificent contradiction. We have a very good idea of what is inside, backed by both historical text and scientific survey, and yet it remains one of the most definitively unexplored sites on Earth. The treasures that might await are the stuff of fantasy. Beyond the bronze sarcophagus and the flowing mercury, there could be entire libraries of bamboo slips containing lost classics of Chinese philosophy and literature, burned by the emperor's order but with duplicate copies buried with him for his eternal edification. There could be unimaginable works of art in jade, gold, and silk, providing an unblemished snapshot of the material culture that unified China. Some even speculate that the tomb could contain the ultimate map, a detailed record of the emperor's quest for immortality, including the locations of elixirs and perhaps even the fabled ingredients themselves. The underground palace is not merely a grave, it is a frozen moment in time, a complete and perfect replica of the world as the first emperor of China understood it, built at a staggering cost of human life and resources. Its sealed doors represent a promise and a challenge to the future, a testament to one man's colossal ego and our own technological limitations, ensuring that the ultimate secret of the Qin dynasty remains locked in a silent, dark, and toxic kingdom beneath a quiet green hill. But the silent, toxic majesty of an emperor's tomb is a danger born of chemistry and preservation, a calculated decision to leave the past undisturbed. Our next location, however, is shrouded in a fear of a different kind, where the threat is said to be supernatural, a palpable dread that hangs in the very air. In the Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan, India, the ruins of Bangar Fort stand as a monument to a legend so powerful that the Indian government itself has posted an official warning, forbidding anyone from entering its grounds after sunset. Known widely as the most haunted place in India, the fort is not just a collection of old stones. It is the epicenter of a curse that, according to local law, doomed a thriving city to become a ghost town in a single, terrifying night. The legend, passed down through generations, centers on a beautiful princess named Ratnavati and a sorcerer named Singhia, who was well versed in the dark arts. The story goes that the magician became utterly infatuated with the princess's beauty. One day, as the princess's maid was buying oil in the market, Singhia saw his chance. He used his magic to enchant the oil, intending that when the princess applied it to her skin, she would fall under his power and come to him willingly. The princess, however, was sharp and perceptive. She saw the magician casting his spell from a distance. In a moment of fury and self-preservation, she threw the enchanted vial of oil away from her. The story takes a dark turn here, for the vial did not simply shatter on the ground. It flew towards a massive boulder, and upon contact, the rock began to roll, thundering directly toward the sorcerer. Knowing his doom was upon him, Singhia used his last breath to lay a curse upon the entire fort and its people. He proclaimed that the city of Bangar would be destroyed, that no roof would ever again be raised above the height of the palaces, and that all who lived there would perish, their souls never finding peace. Shortly thereafter, an invasion from a neighboring kingdom laid waste to the city, seemingly fulfilling the curse and leaving the grand fort abandoned to the elements and to the spirits of its former residents. Today, the tangible, modern proof of this enduring fear is a simple, stark sign erected by the Archaeological Survey of India at the fort's entrance. It states clearly that entering the fort boundaries before sunrise and after sunset is strictly prohibited. This is not a suggestion for tourists, it is an official legal decree. The sign gives no specific reason, but everyone knows it is a direct acknowledgement of the curse and the countless reports of paranormal activity within the walls after dark. Visitors and even security guards stationed nearby tell stories of disembodied voices echoing through the empty market street, the sound of ghostly music and anklets from the temple complex, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched, followed, and even touched by unseen hands. Many report a sudden, chilling drop in temperature and feelings of intense anxiety and nausea that vanish the moment they step outside the main gate. These persistent accounts, combined with the government's unusual edict, create an atmosphere where the line between folklore and frightening reality becomes dangerously blurred. Yet the true, unexplored heart of Bangor's mystery lies not in the main courtyards that tourists carefully traverse during the day, but in the fort's deeper, more ruined sections, and one location in particular, the supposed home of the magician Linger himself. The main palace structures are crumbling but accessible, but further in, the ruins become a treacherous maze of collapsed walls, hidden cellars, and overgrown pathways leading to the older, more dilapidated parts of the city. These areas are considered too unstable and dangerous for casual exploration, but the danger ascribed to them is not merely physical. Locals firmly believe that the magician's spirit, along with the tormented souls of those who perished in the cursed invasion, are most powerful and malevolent in these forgotten spaces. The specific ruins said to be Linger's home are widely avoided, even by the most daring paranormal investigators. The stories surrounding this spot are the most intense, with claims that anyone who attempts to spend the night there or to probe too deeply into its secrets will fall victim to the curse themselves, meeting with severe misfortune, illness, or even death. This potent combination of official prohibition, widespread fear, and genuine structural decay has rendered these deeper sections of Bangor Fort one of the most psychologically and physically inaccessible locations on our list. Modern archaeology has never conducted a thorough, large-scale excavation of the site, in part because of the immense logistical challenges, but also out of a deep cultural respect for, and perhaps a fear of, the legend that defines it. The ruins stand as a testament to the power of a story, a narrative so potent that it has effectively sealed off parts of a historical monument for centuries. The unexplored chambers and the magician's home are not just piles of stone. They are the physical anchor points for a curse that continues to hold sway over the living, making Bangor a place where history and horror are inextricably fused, and where the most profound secrets remain protected not by traps or toxins, but by the enduring, chilling power of a sorcerer's dying words. Leaving behind the cursed silence of Bangor Fort, we journey now to a mystery of a different kind. One not of supernatural dread, but of a historical silence so profound it forces us to rewrite the narrative of an entire civilization. In 1986, in the quiet Chinese countryside of Sichuan province, workers at a brick factory made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the world of archaeology. They were digging clay when their tools struck something hard and metallic. What they unearthed was not just a few artifacts, but two massive sacrificial pits filled with objects so bizarre, so utterly unlike anything ever found in China, that they seemed to belong to another world. This was the dawn of the Sangsingdui civilization, a culture that flourished over 3,000 years ago, contemporaneous with the Shang dynasty, yet possessing an artistic and technological vision that was completely alien. The contents of these pits were nothing short of mind-bending. Imagine bronze heads with bulging, tubular eyes and enormous, mask-like features that look more like ancient astronauts than human beings. There were towering bronze trees, one standing over 13 feet tall, with birds, flowers, and dragons adorning its branches, possibly representing a mythical tree connecting heaven and earth. They uncovered a life-sized statue of a man with an elaborate headdress, his hands positioned as if holding some sacred object, a figure of immense and unknown authority. There were golden scepters, jade implements of incredible workmanship, and enormous bronze masks with protruding pupils and animal-like ears. The artistic style was a total departure from the more formal, human-centric art of the Shang dynasty to the east. There was no precedent for this, no gradual evolution in the archaeological record. Sanxingdui appeared fully formed, a sophisticated society with masterful bronze casting skills, yet its visual language was a complete enigma, speaking of gods, rituals, and a cosmology we can only begin to guess at. This mystery is deepened exponentially by one glaring, frustrating absence: the complete lack of any written records. While the Shang dynasty left behind thousands of oracle bones inscribed with early Chinese script, detailing everything from royal lineages to harvest predictions, not a single piece of writing has been found at Sanxingdui. Their history is told entirely through these silent, magnificent objects. We have no king lists, no accounts of their battles or beliefs, no names for their gods or their rulers. We do not know what they called themselves or how they governed. This silence is what truly separates Sanxingdui from other ancient mysteries. We are left to interpret their entire world through the haunting, abstract faces of their statues, forcing archaeologists to become art critics and psychoanalysts, trying to decode a lost religion from the shape of a pair of bronze eyes. The plot thickens with the civilization's sudden and unexplained demise. Around 3,000 years ago, at the peak of their cultural achievement, the Sanxingdui civilization vanished. The evidence suggests this was not a slow decline, but a deliberate and dramatic end. The two great artifact pits were not tombs, they were ritual burial sites where the civilization's most sacred objects were carefully broken, burned, and then systematically laid in the ground, as if in a mass formal decommissioning. Why would a people so thoroughly destroy their own religious heritage? Theories abound, but without written accounts, they remain speculative. Perhaps a catastrophic earthquake or flood forced them to abandon their city, and they ritually killed their gods before departing. Maybe they were conquered by a rival state, and this was an act of desecration by the victors. Or, most intriguingly, it could have been an internal religious revolution, where a new priest-king rose to power and ordered the symbols of the old gods to be destroyed and buried, cleansing the land for a new faith. Whatever the cause, the civilization that created these wonders simply faded from history, its memory erased so completely that not even Chinese historical legends held a trace of them. This brings us to the most tantalizing and utterly unexplored aspect of the entire Sanxingdui enigma. We have found their ritual pits, their workshops, and the remains of a walled city that was massive for its time. But we have not found the single most important locations in any ancient society: the royal tombs and the main palace complex. The sacrificial pits held religious items, but the final resting places of the kings and queens who ruled this bizarre and brilliant culture are still missing. Where are the tombs filled with the personal wealth and regalia of the Sanxingdui elite? Where is the central throne room, the administrative heart of this kingdom? These locations would hold the keys to unlocking the mystery. Within a royal tomb, we might find the one thing that has eluded us: written records, perhaps on perishable materials like bamboo or silk, that could finally give these people a voice. We could learn their names, their history, and the true meaning behind the bulging eyes and golden masks. The search for these central sites is the great unfinished chapter of Sanxingdui archaeology. The terrain of the Sichuan Basin is vast, and the civilization's main capital might still lie buried under modern towns or deep beneath layers of silt. The discovery of a royal necropolis would be as monumental as the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb, but with the potential to reveal a lost chapter of human history. It could prove that Chinese civilization, rather than being a single, unified stream from the Yellow River, was in fact a confluence of multiple, wildly different cultures, one of which, the Sangsingdui, developed in complete isolation, creating a worldview and an artistic tradition so unique that it still has the power to shock and awe us today. Until those tombs are found, the Sangsingdui remain the ultimate ghost civilization, their story a magnificent silhouette against the backdrop of history, defined more by what we don't know than by what we do. Returning to the relentless puzzle of Oak Island, the modern era of the treasure hunt has been dominated by a new wave of explorers armed not just with shovels and determination, but with sophisticated technology and the power of television. At the forefront are brothers Rick and Marty Lagina, whose childhood dream of solving the mystery has unfolded over a decade on the History Channel series The Curse of Oak Island. Their approach has been systematic and expansive, employing a scale of excavation previously unimaginable. They haven't just revisited the original money pit, they have transformed entire sections of the island into a massive archaeological dig, using caissons' massive metal tubes driven deep into the bedrock to create dry work environments known as cofferdams around key areas like Smith's Cove. This has allowed them to expose the intricate layers of the legendary box drains, the very flood tunnel system that has foiled searchers for centuries, confirming its existence as a brilliantly engineered, man-made defense mechanism. The technological arsenal brought to bear on the island's secrets is staggering. The team regularly employs sonar scanners to map subterranean cavities, ground-penetrating radar to identify anomalies deep below the surface, and sophisticated drilling rigs that can extract core samples from astonishing depth. One of the most compelling modern techniques involves sending a camera down a borehole to glimpse what lies in the inaccessible chambers below. It was during one such camera drop into a region known as the Hatch that the team witnessed something electrifying. In the murky water at the bottom of the borehole, the camera captured the glint of a shiny, metallic object, along with what appeared to be a severed human hand, made of wood, a potential piece of a long-lost ship's figurehead. These ghostly images, while inconclusive, fuel the fire of possibility, suggesting that the deep subterranean voids are not empty but contain artifacts waiting to be recovered. Perhaps the most controversial and paradigm-shifting clues to emerge in recent years are the artifacts that suggest a presence on the island long before the accepted timeline of European exploration. The most hotly debated of these is the alleged discovery of a Roman sword, reportedly found in the waters just off the island. If authentic, such an artifact would upend history, suggesting that ancient Roman or Carthaginian mariners may have crossed the Atlantic centuries before the Vikings and over a millennium before Columbus. While the legitimacy of this specific sword is fiercely contested by mainstream historians, other finds lend credence to the theory of pre-Columbian contact. Lead cross artifacts analyzed and dated to a period before the 15th century have been unearthed, and slivers of wood brought up from deep boreholes have been carbon dated to the year 1442, decades before Columbus's famed voyage. These pieces of evidence point to a dramatic and completely unrecorded chapter of history potentially playing out on this small Canadian island. All of this painstaking work and tantalizing discovery culminates in the ultimate goal, reaching the fabled Chamber A, a large, water-filled void detected by seismic surveys at a depth of over 160 feet directly in the Money Pit area. This is the modern Grail, the believed location of the original treasure deposit. The suspense now revolves around the next phase of drilling, a massive campaign designed to finally intercept this chamber. The plan involves sinking a new, larger caisson, a so-called Big Dig, to bedrock, then drilling a series of precise core holes directly into the anomaly. The hope is to first retrieve a core sample that might contain traces of precious metals. The smoking gun that proves treasure is present before attempting to dewater the chamber and send down a remotely operated vehicle for a direct visual inspection. The entire multi-million-dollar enterprise hangs on what that next core sample will reveal. Will it be simple bedrock and stones, or will it be laced with the silver and gold that has been the stuff of legend for over 200 years? The enduring enigma of Oak Island's deeper levels is no longer just about gold and jewels. It's about validating a story that defies conventional history. Every piece of wood, every shard of metal, and every geological anomaly pulled from the depths adds a sentence to a narrative we are only beginning to read. The island challenges us to consider the possibility of incredible maritime journeys, lost civilizations, and engineering genius that we have never credited to the past. The next turn of the drill bit could either bring forth the greatest treasure discovery in history, or simply add another layer to the intricate, frustrating, and utterly captivating mystery that ensures Oak Island remains, at its heart, perpetually and profoundly unexplored. Returning to the cryptic pages of the Voynich Manuscript, our search for its origins becomes a kind of historical detective story, one that takes us to the opulent, intellectually charged courts of Renaissance Europe and the silent, contemplative halls of distant monasteries. While we know the manuscript eventually surfaced in the collection of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II in Prague around the turn of the 17th century, its journey to that point is a complete blank. This has led scholars to propose two very different, yet equally compelling, environments for its creation, each leaving a distinct fingerprint on the manuscript's mysterious character. The first and perhaps most glamorous setting is the court of Rudolf himself in Prague. Rudolf was not a typical ruler. He was a deeply eccentric and reclusive monarch, a passionate patron of both mainstream science and the occult. His court was a magnet for the greatest minds and the greatest charlatans of the era. Astronomers like Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler walked the same halls as alchemists, magicians, and collectors of bizarre curiosities. This was a world where the boundaries between empirical science, mystical philosophy, and outright fraud were constantly blurred. In this environment, the Voynich Manuscript would not have been an anomaly. It would have been a coveted treasure, a mysterious book of secrets that perfectly matched the emperor's esoteric tastes. It is entirely plausible that the manuscript was created for Rudolf's court, perhaps by a clever forger like Edward Kelly, who, with his partner John Dee, was a known figure there, selling the emperor on all manner of mystical wonders. The bizarre botanical illustrations and unreadable text would have been seen not as nonsense, but as a profound, encoded wisdom from a lost civilization, precisely the kind of object that would fascinate a collector like Rudolf. The manuscript's home in this scenario was a palace chamber filled with astrolabes, alchemical retorts, and other strange artifacts, its pages illuminated by candlelight as courtiers and scholars debated its impenetrable meaning. On the other hand, a completely different genesis point emerges when we look closely at the manuscript's own imagery, suggesting a far more isolated origin. The architectural features in the drawings, particularly the distinctive swallow-tail merlons, those fork-like battlements on the castles, are a style strongly associated with northern Italy, specifically the regions of Lombardy and the Veneto. This tiny architectural detail is a powerful clue, pointing away from the bustling imperial court and toward a secluded monastic community in the Italian Alps or the rugged Apennines. In this setting, the manuscript transforms from a courtly curiosity into a sacred, or perhaps heretical, project. Imagine a lone monk or a small group of brothers working in a secluded scriptorium, surrounded by herb gardens that supplied the models for the manuscript's otherworldly plants. Their goal may not have been deception but devotion. They could have been attempting to record a divine language, a lingua adamica, the original tongue of paradise spoken before the fall of Babylon. The purpose of the manuscript would then be spiritual, By writing and illustrating in this holy script, they were engaging in a meditative act, drawing themselves closer to God through the contemplation of a creation that was both botanical and celestial. The nymphs bathing in green tubes could represent a spiritual cleansing process, and the astronomical charts a map of the soul's journey to heaven. Here, the manuscript's home is a cold, stone-walled room, the silence broken only by the scratch of a quill and the turning of a page. The very plants and stars depicted in the manuscript offer their own geographical testimony, yet they speak in a frustratingly cryptic tongue. The botanical section is the largest in the book, filled with renderings of flora that are simultaneously detailed and impossible. Many plants are composites, with roots, leaves, and flowers from different species grafted onto a single stem, a common practice in medieval herbals to symbolize the combined medicinal properties of multiple plants. However, some researchers have attempted to identify real-world locations by focusing on the few renderings that seem to depict actual, identifiable species. One prominent theory points to the New World, suggesting that plants like a species of Mexican sunflower or a Central American vine are represented, which would imply the author had access to botanical knowledge from the early Spanish expeditions to the Americas. If true, this would place the manuscript's creation after 1492 and potentially link it to a Spanish or Italian intellectual circle with connections to the explorers. Conversely, the astronomical section presents its own puzzles. The circular diagrams seem to represent constellations, but they do not match traditional Western or Arabic star maps. Some scholars have proposed they are schematic representations, not literal skies, while others have tried to align them with the night sky as seen from specific latitudes, with suggestions ranging from Central Europe to northern Italy. Yet, just as one pattern seems to emerge, another detail contradicts it, leaving the botanical and celestial evidence as divided and enigmatic as the text itself. This fundamental conflict between the cosmopolitan court and the isolated cloister is what keeps the physical, brick-and-mortar location of the Voynich Manuscript's creation one of history's greatest unexplored mysteries. We are not searching for a lost city or a buried tomb, but for a specific room, a specific desk. Was it a sunlit studio in the sprawling complex of Prague Castle, surrounded by the babble of international scholars and the clinking of alchemical glassware? Or was it a dimly lit cell in a monastery perched high in the Dolomites, where the only sounds were the wind and the chanting of psalms? The answer to this question is the master key that would unlock the entire mystery. Knowing the origin would instantly provide the cultural context needed to understand its purpose. Was it a lucrative hoax, a spiritual cipher, or a coded scientific treatise? The current owner of the manuscript, Yale University's Voynich Library, is merely its latest temporary home. Its true home, the place where it was conceived and born, remains a ghost, a location as carefully concealed by history as the meaning of its words. Until we can pinpoint that original workshop, the Voynich Manuscript will continue to be a book without a birthplace, a timeless orphan whose secrets are guarded by the silence of its own creation. The word Croatoan carved into that weathered post is perhaps the most famous clue in all of American history, a single term that has launched countless investigations and haunted the imagination for centuries. But what if we stopped treating it as an unsolvable riddle and started seeing it as the clear, literal instruction it was meant to be? Governor John White certainly did. The absence of the pre-arranged Maltese cross, the agreed-upon signal for distress, was a deliberate message from his people. We have moved, we are not under duress, and we have gone to Croatoan Island. The mystery, then, is not what the word means, but what happened to the colonists after they arrived at that destination. Modern archaeology has turned its focus to this very question, and the evidence emerging from Hatteras Island, the modern name for the historical Croatoan, is quietly building a compelling case that the lost colonists did not vanish, but instead embarked on a remarkable story of survival and assimilation. For decades, archaeologists and volunteers have been meticulously sifting through the soil of Hatteras Island, and their findings paint a vivid picture of a community in transition. The most telling discoveries are not grand, singular treasures, but everyday objects that tell a story of cultural blending. Excavations have uncovered a mix of European and Native American artifacts from the late 16th century, all found together in the same archaeological layers. Alongside traditional Croatoan pottery and stone tools, researchers have found the butt of a unique type of rapier, a gentleman's dueling sword that was distinctly English. They've unearthed a delicate signet ring, likely used for sealing documents with wax, a small, personal item that an English colonist would have cherished. There are gun parts, pieces of writing slates, and a particular kind of glass bead that dates precisely to the Roanoke colonization period. Crucially, these aren't items that were traded in a brief, fleeting encounter. The context suggests they were being used, worn, and eventually lost or discarded as part of daily life, indicating that the English were not just visitors here, but were living alongside the Croatoan people, integrating their material culture into a new, shared existence. Historians who champion the integration theory point to this archaeological record as powerful, tangible proof. They argue that the colonists, faced with the grim reality of starvation and abandonment after 3 years with no sign of whites' return, had only one logical choice: to seek refuge with the one group that had shown them consistent, if cautious, friendship. The Croatoan people, led by their chief Mantio, who had actually traveled to England and back with earlier expeditions, were the most likely allies. This wasn't a hostile takeover or a desperate surrender. It was a pragmatic decision for mutual benefit. The English colonists brought with them metal tools, weapons, and knowledge of European technologies, valuable assets to a native community. In return, the Croatoan offered survival skills, food, and protection in a land the English were ill-equipped to handle on their own. Over time, as the colonists realized no rescue was coming, they would have intermarried, their children growing up in a blended culture, speaking a mix of languages, and creating a new identity that was neither fully English nor fully Croatoan, but something entirely new. The lost colony was not wiped out, it was absorbed. This theory is further supported by intriguing, if fragmentary, accounts from the next wave of English settlers who founded Jamestown 20 years later. Captain John Smith, the leader of Jamestown, recorded hearing reports from various Powhatan tribes about people who sounded exactly like the Roanoke colonists. The most specific account came from Chief Powhatan himself, who allegedly claimed to have attacked and slaughtered a group of white people living with a tribe to the south, showing Smith a musket barrel and a brass mortar as proof. While this points to a tragic end for one group, it also confirms that some colonists were known to be living inland. Another Jamestown leader, William Strachey, wrote in 1612 of hearing about white men at the native towns of Okanahonan and Pakarakanik, who supposedly lived under the protection of a chief and had built 2-story stone houses. These persistent rumors passed from one native group to another and eventually to the English, strongly suggest that the Roanoke colonists had splintered into smaller groups, with some integrating on Hatteras Island and others moving further inland in search of a more permanent home. So, if the evidence for integration is so compelling, why does Roanoke still hold its place as a great unexplored mystery? The answer lies in the gap between evidence and definitive proof. We have found artifacts on Hatteras that suggest cohabitation, but we have not yet found the smoking gun, the specific, concentrated settlement site where the 115 colonists first established their new community. We have not uncovered their burial grounds, which would contain the skeletal remains that could tell us through DNA and isotopic analysis exactly who these people were and where they came from. The final, conclusive chapter of the Roanoke story is not in the scattered artifacts, but in the silent, unmarked graves and the foundational post holes of their lost village. This settlement, whether on Hatteras Island or further inland at a site like the theorized Site X near the Albemarle Sound, is the true lost city of Roanoke. It is a ghost settlement, its location protected by centuries of shifting sands, dense forest, and coastal erosion. A place that holds the physical remains of America's oldest and most poignant unsolved puzzle, waiting for the one discovery that will finally turn a compelling theory into settled history. Perhaps the most profound way to view the enduring mystery of Genghis Khan's final resting place is to stop thinking of it as a single, lost point on a map and to start seeing it as an entire hidden kingdom, a landscape so sacred that its very soil and stones are considered part of his eternal monument. The search shifts from a treasure hunt for a tomb to an understanding of a spiritual worldview, centered on a place known for centuries as the Ik-Korig, or the Great Taboo. This was a vast forbidden zone encompassing the sacred Burkhan-Khaldun mountain and the surrounding valleys of the Kentai province, an area deliberately and ferociously kept empty of human presence. For generations after the Great Khan's death, this territory was patrolled by a special warrior tribe, the Uriankhai, who had the grim duty of executing any intruder on sight. This wasn't merely a security perimeter, it was a ritual act of consecration, a way of marking the entire region as a divine sanctuary for the soul of the world conqueror. The land itself became his mausoleum, with no single marker needed, because every hill, every river, and every forest was considered part of his eternal domain. This deep-seated belief that the landscape is the true tomb is rooted in the Mongols' ancient Tengriist faith, a spiritual system that venerates the eternal blue sky and the living earth. In this worldview, certain places are inherently charged with spiritual power, and Burkhan-Khaldun was Genghis Khan's personal mountain, a site where he had prayed for salvation in his youth and which he credited for his rise to power. To disturb such a place, to dig into its flesh in search of a body, is seen as a profound sacrilege, an act that could sever the connection between the people, their legendary ancestor, and the fortune he bestowed upon the nation. For many modern Mongols, the potential archaeological triumph of discovery is far outweighed by the spiritual catastrophe of desecration. The peace of the Great Khan is not just a historical curiosity, it is considered directly linked to the well-being of Mongolia itself. This isn't a passive tradition, it is a living, breathing conviction that continues to shape national policy and local sentiment, creating an invisible yet impenetrable barrier around the entire region. It is this powerful cultural context that dictates the approach of modern science, forcing a remarkable collaboration between technology and tradition. Contemporary archaeologists and explorers, acutely aware of these sensitivities, have largely abandoned any thought of invasive digging. Instead, they have turned to the skies, employing non-invasive tools like satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar to scan the Ik-Korig from a respectful distance. The goal of projects like those led by Albert Lin is not to pinpoint a spot for excavation, but to create a vast virtual map of the landscape, identifying subtle, man-made anomalies. The ghost of a buried structure, the hint of an old road, the outline of a ceremonial platform without ever breaking the soil. This method allows for the pursuit of knowledge while honoring the belief that the physical earth must remain undisturbed. It is a delicate dance of curiosity and respect, where the most advanced imaging technology is used precisely so that shovels do not have to be. Every scan that reveals a potential site is met not with plans for a dig, but with a quiet acknowledgement, a digital record made for future generations who may or may not ever decide to look closer. The result of this ethical stance is that the Kentai Mountains hold their secret not through a lack of clues, but through a collective, conscious choice. We may already have the technological capability to narrow down the location to a handful of highly probable sites. The seismic data and satellite scans have likely identified several tantalizing candidates deep within the Forbidden Zone. Yet, these coordinates remain theoretical. their truth unverified and protected by a wall of reverence that is far stronger than any booby trap or flood tunnel. The mystery of Genghis Khan's tomb is therefore unique on our list. It is not unexplored because it is lost to us, but because we have found the wisdom to leave it be. The precise location remains a secret, guarded as much by the enduring will of his people as by the ancient curses of his loyal guards, ensuring that the great Khan's final command, to rest in the peace of his sacred landscape, is honored for centuries more to come. Returning now to the enduring enigma of the Great Pyramid, we find that the story of its hidden chambers is far from over. While the discovery of the Queen's Chamber's so-called air shafts and the mysterious subterranean pit have long captivated researchers, a truly revolutionary find was announced in 2017, one that proved even this 4,500-year-old structure still has the capacity to astound. Using a groundbreaking technique known as muon tomography, an international team of scientists from the Scan Pyramids project detected a massive, previously unknown void situated directly above the Grand Gallery. Dubbed simply the Big Void, this hidden space is colossal, estimated to be around 100 feet long and possessing a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself, making it the first major internal structure found in the pyramid since the 19th century. This wasn't a small gap in the masonry. It was a deliberate, significant architectural feature, a secret chamber that had been perfectly concealed from the world for millennia. The discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological community, forcing a complete re-evaluation of what we thought we knew about the pyramid's internal design and its ultimate purpose. The technology that made this discovery possible sounds like it was pulled from the pages of a science fiction novel. Muon tomography works by harnessing the power of cosmic rays. These are high-energy particles that are constantly bombarding our atmosphere from deep space. When these cosmic rays collide with atoms in the upper air, they produce a shower of secondary particles, including muons. Muons are similar to electrons but are much heavier and can penetrate deep into solid matter before being absorbed. The key insight was to use these naturally occurring particles as a form of high-powered X-ray. Scientists placed special, extremely sensitive muon detecting plates in and around the pyramid, including inside the Queen's Chamber. By carefully counting the number and trajectory of the muons that passed through the stone, they could create a density map of the structure. Areas where a large number of muons passed through unimpeded indicated empty space, while areas that absorbed most of the particles indicated solid stone. It was through this painstaking process that the unmistakable signature of the Big Void emerged, a vast emptiness where there should have been millions of tons of limestone blocks. This non-invasive method allowed researchers to see through the pyramid's heart without drilling a single hole, revealing a secret that had been held in stone and darkness since the age of the pharaohs. The existence of this void immediately sparked intense debate and speculation about its function. One of the leading theories is that it served as a relieving chamber, a structural innovation designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid's upper layers away from the ceiling of the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber below it. We see a similar, though smaller scale, principle in the construction of the chambers above the King's Chamber, which are also believed to be relieving chambers. The sheer size of the Big Void, however, suggests a project of unprecedented engineering ambition. Other experts, however, propose a far more tantalizing possibility. Could this be a hidden burial chamber, the true final resting place of Pharaoh Khufu? The grand, empty sarcophagus in the King's Chamber has always been a puzzle. Perhaps it was a decoy, an elaborate ruse to mislead grave robbers, while the pharaoh's actual mummy and his most precious funerary goods were sealed away in this inaccessible space high above the main passages. Alternatively, the void might not be a single chamber at all, but a complex series of construction ramps or corridors that were intentionally sealed off as the pyramid was completed, a frozen snapshot of the building process itself. Each theory carries profound implications, pointing either to a mastery of architectural physics we scarcely credit to the ancients, or to a level of religious and strategic deception that would rewrite our understanding of Egyptian royal burials. The enormous challenge and the thrilling promise now lies in finding a way to explore this space without causing any damage to the monument. The ethical imperative is clear. This is a World Heritage Site of unparalleled significance, and invasive drilling or digging is simply not an option. The future of this exploration, therefore, lies in the continued development of minimally invasive robotics and imaging technology. The next step would likely involve drilling a tiny borehole, no more than an inch or two in diameter, through the existing stone blocks to reach the void. Through this small portal, researchers could then deploy a flexible, snake-like robotic arm equipped with a micro-camera and environmental sensors. Such a device could beam back the first live images of a space untouched for 45 centuries, revealing whether it contains artifacts, inscriptions, or is simply an empty architectural feature. This approach would preserve the structural integrity of the pyramid while finally satisfying humanity's burning curiosity about what lies within. The potential for discovery is staggering. Imagine the camera revealing hieroglyphs detailing the pyramid's true purpose, or the glint of gold funerary masks and royal regalia belonging to Khufu himself, or even sealed containers holding papyrus scrolls that could illuminate the finer details of 4th Dynasty society, religion, and science. The Big Void represents the next great frontier in Egyptology, a sealed door at the heart of our most iconic ancient wonder, waiting for the moment when our technology and our reverence allow us to finally, gently peer inside. Of all the 64 cryptic entries in the Copper Scroll, one stands apart, a riddle wrapped inside the larger enigma that has proven to be the most maddening of all. It is the final entry, number 64, and it doesn't list more gold or silver. Instead, it claims to be the key to everything that came before it, stating that a duplicate of the scroll itself, an exact copy with all the same measurements and directions, was hidden away for safekeeping. This is a breathtaking assertion. Finding this duplicate would be the ultimate validation, confirming beyond any doubt that the scroll is a genuine treasure map and not an allegory. But the directions to this second scroll are perhaps the most obscure in the entire document. It describes a location involving a tunnel with a pool and a cistern, directions that sound straightforward but have led searchers on a century-long chase into a geographical nightmare. The primary challenge in pursuing this specific vault is the profound transformation of the Judean landscape over 2,000 years. The scroll's directions rely on micro-topography, a specific tunnel, a particular pool, a singular cistern, features that are incredibly ephemeral in a region defined by earthquakes, flash floods, and centuries of human rebuilding. A tunnel with a pool could refer to a sophisticated ancient water catchment system, of which there were hundreds throughout the region, many now collapsed and filled with debris. It could point to a natural limestone cave that has since been sealed by a rockfall. The word cistern is equally problematic. The arid hills around the Dead Sea are pockmarked with thousands of ancient cisterns carved into the rock to collect precious rainwater. Identifying the one single cistern mentioned in the scroll is like trying to find a specific needle in a stack of nearly identical needles, where the entire stack has been dumped on the ground, kicked around, and half buried by desert sands over 2 millennia. The landmarks that would have been obvious to a first-century priest are now invisible to us, erased by the relentless passage of time. This topographical vagueness has funneled modern searches toward a few promising but ultimately fruitless areas. One concentrated effort has focused on the Qumran Plateau itself, the very area where the scroll was found. The reasoning is elegant. If you were a priest hiding a master copy of a staggeringly important inventory, would you not hide it close to your community, in a place you could access and monitor? Expeditions have used ground-penetrating radar to scan the entire plateau, identifying numerous subterranean anomalies. Archaeologists have dug at the bases of cliffs, investigating every natural crevice and man-made cave, hoping to find the tunnel with a pool that leads to the duplicate scroll. Other searches have radiated outwards, following ancient paths and dry riverbeds or wadis that lead from Qumran into the more rugged highlands. These expeditions are grueling treks through some of the most inhospitable terrain on Earth, in blistering heat, with searchers checking every cave mouth and depression in the ground, only to find them empty or containing nothing more than broken pottery from a later era. Each failed search narrows the possibilities in one sense, but it also deepens the mystery, proving that the scroll's final secret is protected by a perfect security system, the utter annihilation of the context needed to understand its instructions. What makes this particular vault the ultimate unclaimed treasure is not the material value of a duplicate copper scroll, but the monumental historical clarification it represents. Possessing the second scroll would be the closest thing we could get to a Rosetta Stone for this entire mystery. By comparing the two, we could check for scribble errors, confirm the accuracy of the translated measurements, and see if any subtle differences in the text offered new clues. Its discovery would silence the skeptics who dismiss the scroll as a work of fiction, transforming it instantly into a verified historical document. This would, in turn, set off the greatest treasure hunt in human history, with a confirmed, detailed map to billions of dollars in ancient wealth. The potential for rewriting history is immense, as it could provide concrete evidence about the inner workings of the Second Temple treasury and the desperate measures taken during the Jewish revolt. The duplicate scroll is therefore the linchpin, the single artifact that holds the power to convert a 2,000-year-old legend into a tangible, earth-shattering reality. Its continued absence, hidden in its tunnel behind a pool, secures its status as the most profoundly unexplored location on the list, a secret whose revelation rests on deciphering not just words on metal, but the lost face of the land itself. If the outer districts of Heracleion have yielded statues and ships that rewrite history, then the city's still buried heart promises to reveal its very soul. Deep within the central district, shielded by layers of silt and the dark, cold water of Abu Qir Bay, lies the most tantalizing prize of all, the royal quarters. This was the nucleus of power and faith, the location of the Grand Palace and the main temple of Amun-Jereb, a complex that served as the spiritual and administrative anchor for the entire city. While the peripheral discoveries have been staggering, they are merely the scattered jewels from a crown that still rests on the seabed. The central district represents the unexplored core, a place where the city's rulers lived, governed, and performed the sacred rites that connected them to the gods, and it is here that the potential for discovery becomes almost unimaginable. The extraordinary preservation in this specific area is not a matter of luck but of chemistry. The deep, anoxic clay at the bottom of the bay creates an environment almost entirely devoid of oxygen. This absence is a preservative of unparalleled power. In ordinary conditions, organic materials, wood, cloth, papyrus, food, and even human remains would decay and vanish within centuries. But here, sealed in this cold, dark, oxygen-free mud, time effectively stops. We could find the wooden beams of the palace's grand reception hall, still standing or fallen in place, their carvings and paint as vibrant as the day the city sank. The potential for recovering papyrus is particularly electrifying. Imagine uncovering the city's state archives, tax records, diplomatic correspondence with other Mediterranean powers, royal decrees, and perhaps even the personal journals of its last governors. These documents, written in ink on fragile papyrus, would normally have turned to dust millennia ago, but in the deep clay of Heracleion, they could be perfectly legible, offering a direct, unfiltered voice from the city's final days. Within the temple of Amun-Jereb itself, the possibilities are enough to redefine our understanding of Egyptian religion in this cosmopolitan port. This was not some remote outpost. It was a major religious center where Egyptian theology met the influences of Greek traders and Phoenician merchants. The inner sanctums of the temple could hold ritual objects of breathtaking artistry, from solid gold statues of the gods to ceremonial barges used in processions. But the most profound discovery might be the temple library. In sacred scriptoriums, priests would have kept detailed records of rituals, astronomical observations, and theological interpretations. Finding such a collection would be like opening a time capsule on the spiritual life of a dying city, revealing how its people made sense of their world, and perhaps how they interpreted the earthquakes and floods that were beginning to consume them. The ultimate historical revelation, however, lies in the very moment of Heracleon's demise. The central district, as the seat of power, would have been the nerve center during the city's death throes. The layout of the ruins will tell a forensically detailed story. Was the palace found in a state of organized abandonment, suggesting the elite had time to flee with their most valuable possessions? Or does the evidence point to a sudden, catastrophic collapse, with artifacts and remains frozen in a moment of panic? The sediment layers themselves act as a geological clock, recording the sequence of the disaster. Perhaps a series of tremors that cracked foundations, followed by the devastating liquefaction of the soil that caused the grand structures to tilt and sink in a matter of hours. By studying the direction of fallen columns and the distribution of everyday objects, archaeologists could piece together a minute-by-minute narrative of the city's final, terrifying hours, understanding not just how it fell, but what it was like for the people who experienced its sinking. The royal quarters of Heracleon are therefore more than a treasure vault. They are a pristine archaeological crime scene, holding the complete and untouched story of a city's life and its dramatic, watery end, all waiting in the silent, protective embrace of the mud. While many treasure sites are protected by booby traps or historical curses, the guardian of the lost Dutchman's mine is far more elemental and relentless, the brutal, unforgiving landscape of the Superstition Mountains themselves. This is not a gentle, rolling range of hills, but a volcanic fortress forged in fire and shattered by time, a place where the very ground underfoot seems designed to punish and deceive. The mountains are a labyrinth of deep, twisting canyons where one sandstone corridor looks almost exactly like the next, and towering, jagged spires cast shadows that shift and lie with the movement of the sun, turning reliable landmarks into confusing phantoms by afternoon. In this vertical maze, even experienced hikers with maps and compasses can become utterly disoriented, finding themselves walking in circles as the canyon walls close in, their sense of direction warped by the relentless, repeating geology. It is a terrain that doesn't just hide the mine, it actively works to ensure that those who seek it never find their way out. Adding a layer of literal, cutting danger to this disorientation is the very stone that makes up the mountains. The region is covered in a particular type of volcanic glass known as Apache tears, smooth, dark obsidian nodules that fracture into fragments with edges as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. When a hiker slips on the loose, treacherous scree covering the slopes, a fall onto this volcanic glass can result in deep, grievous lacerations. A simple misstep becomes a medical emergency, and in a place where help is hours away and cell service is non-existent, a bad cut can quickly turn into a life-threatening situation. This razor-sharp ground is a constant physical reminder of the land's hostility, forcing even the most determined searcher to move with painstaking slowness, their progress measured in careful, deliberate steps rather than bold strides. Then there is the climate, a force of nature as deadly as any hidden trap. In the summer months, the superstitions transform into a furnace. Temperatures regularly soar above 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the arid, low-humidity air pulls moisture from the body with a terrifying speed. Dehydration and heatstroke are constant, insidious threats. The few water sources marked on old maps are often nothing more than dry, cracked beds of clay, their precious water long since evaporated. The sheer physical exertion of climbing and searching in this heat can drain a person's strength in a matter of hours, leading to impaired judgment, delirium, and ultimately collapse. The sun becomes a weapon, the dry air a thief, and the search for gold becomes secondary to the desperate, primal search for a single sip of water. This environmental battery has claimed more lives than any curse, with hikers and prospectors succumbing to the elements, their bodies sometimes found months or years later, a grim testament to the mountain's power. This deadly combination of disorienting geography, treacherous footing, and extreme climate creates a perfect storm of peril that has kept the mines secret for over a century. The landscape acts as a natural, self-resetting security system. It doesn't need crossbow traps or flood tunnels. It uses exhaustion, thirst, and confusion as its primary defenses. It scatters the bones of those who underestimate it, their stories weaving into the legend and serving as a warning to the next wave of hopefuls. The mine's location is not merely lost, it is actively guarded by a living, breathing adversary, the mountain range itself. This ensures that the lost Dutchman's gold mine remains one of the few treasures protected not by the cunning of its hiders, but by the raw, untamed, and deadly power of the natural world. Yet, amidst all this potential, one door remains stubbornly, and perhaps most importantly, closed. Deep within the winding tunnel system, after years of clearing debris and navigating the treacherous, waterlogged passages, the team encountered a formidable barrier, a massive, sealed stone door. This is not a simple collapse, it is a deliberately constructed wall, a clear and intentional barricade placed there by someone who did not wish for what lay beyond to be disturbed. The presence of this door is electrifying, for in the context of a royal tomb, such a deliberate sealing is exactly what one would expect to find protecting the innermost sanctum, the burial chamber itself. Every instinct of an archaeologist points to this being the final threshold, the last physical barrier standing between the modern world and the resolution of a 2,000-year-old mystery. The urge to break through, to finally answer the question that has driven the search for so long, is almost overwhelming. Yet here, patience and science must prevail over passion. To recklessly breach this door would be to risk catastrophic collapse, potentially destroying the very chamber it protects and damaging any fragile organic remains or artifacts inside. The team now faces its greatest test, a careful, meticulous process of assessing the structure, stabilizing the surrounding tunnel, and planning a way to peer beyond the stone without causing its destruction. This single, sealed doorway encapsulates the entire essence of the search for Cleopatra's tomb. It represents the ultimate unexplored space, a silent, dark chamber that could hold nothing but rubble and disappointment, or could contain the greatest archaeological treasure of our age, the final, peaceful resting place of a queen and her Roman general, their story sealed in stone, waiting for the moment we are wise and skilled enough to finally, respectfully let them speak. But for all the secrets willingly sealed by emperors and queens, some of history's most profound mysteries are kept from us not by human hands, but by the very real and present danger of collapse and decay. Deep beneath the modern streets of Rome, beyond the electrically lit tourist paths of the catacombs of San Callisto and San Sebastiano, lies a different world entirely, a sprawling, silent necropolis that has been deliberately sealed off for centuries. These are not just forgotten corridors, they are entire networks of tunnels and burial chambers, closed by ancient landslides or by later generations who feared their structural instability. Within this perpetual darkness, shielded from the air and the footsteps of time, could lie the most pristine and significant relics of early Christianity, a complete time capsule from the 2nd century, waiting in a state of perfect preservation for the day we are capable of entering without causing its destruction. Imagine a chamber sealed by a rock fall around the year 300, its entrance hidden and forgotten. Inside, the air has been still for 1,700 years. On the walls, frescoes depicting the earliest Christian symbols, The fish, the anchor, the good shepherd retain their original, vibrant pigments, applied by artists who may have known the apostles themselves. These would not be the faded, ghostly images we see in the open catacombs, weathered by centuries of humidity and human breath, but brilliant and clear, a direct window into the artistic soul of a persecuted faith. In the burial niches or loculi, the skeletal remains of the first generations of Roman Christians would lie exactly as they were placed, perhaps with personal effects tucked beside them. A worn leather pouch holding a simple glass vial, a terracotta lamp decorated with a cross, or a fragile papyrus fragment of a gospel verse, written in a hand that predates the official codification of the Testament. This is the potential of the sealed necropolis, not merely more of what we have already seen, but a completely undisturbed context, a frozen moment from the era when Christianity was an underground movement, its rituals and art still being formed in the shadows. The most electrifying possibility, however, is the potential to locate the lost graves of the very first martyrs. In the early centuries, during periods of intense persecution, the Christian community would have secretly interred its most venerated members, those who had been executed in the Colosseum or beheaded in the forums, in hidden sections of the catacombs. Their burial sites would have been marked subtly, if at all, to protect them from desecration. When the persecutions ended and these martyrs were formally recognized by the Church, their remains were often translated or moved to grand basilicas above ground. But what if some were never found? A sealed section of the catacombs could contain the original, untouched loculus of a saint whose current shrine in a magnificent church holds relics of questionable authenticity. To find such a tomb with its original identifying inscription or its unique telling artifacts would be a discovery of immense theological and historical significance, providing a tangible, physical connection to the individuals whose faith and sacrifice built the foundation of Western Christianity. Yet, the very act of reaching this potential treasure is fraught with almost insurmountable technical and ethical challenges. The rock of the catacombs is soft, volcanic tuff, chosen by the ancients precisely because it was easy to dig. This same quality makes it dangerously unstable today. Tunnels can narrow without warning into choke points filled with rubble, and ceilings, weakened by centuries of seismic activity and water infiltration, are prone to sudden collapse. A single misstep or the vibration of machinery could trigger a chain reaction, entombing explorers and destroying the very history they seek to uncover. Beyond the structural danger lies the threat of environmental contamination. Many of these sealed areas have developed their own unique microclimates. The sudden introduction of modern air with its different temperature, humidity, and microbial load could cause a rapid and irreversible deterioration of organic materials. Parchment would crumble, wood would warp and split, and those pristine wall paintings could see their pigments flake off in a matter of hours, just as the paint on the terracotta army warriors faded upon exposure. This is why, despite our powerful curiosity and advancing technology, these sealed necropolises remain deliberately unexplored. Modern archaeology's approach is one of extreme caution, prioritizing preservation above all else. Before any physical intrusion is even considered, teams use ground-penetrating radar to map the voids and laser scanners to create detailed three-dimensional models of the known sections, hoping to extrapolate the layout of the sealed ones. Small, flexible robotic probes equipped with cameras and environmental sensors can be fed through existing cracks or drilled boreholes to take preliminary readings of the atmosphere inside, measuring the levels of gases like radon and carbon dioxide that could be lethal to humans. The ultimate goal is non-invasive exploration, to see without touching, to learn without disturbing. The sealed catacombs represent a sacred covenant between the present and the past. They hold stories of immense value to our understanding of human history, but they are stories written on the most fragile of pages. Our challenge is to develop the gentle hands and the patient eyes needed to read them without turning those pages to dust. leaving this silent city of the dead to keep its secrets until we have truly earned the right to know them. From the legendary dream of Atlantis to the toxic, mercury-guarded tomb of China's first emperor, our journey through these 25 mysteries has been a remarkable voyage to the very edges of the known world. We have stood before cryptic carvings in the North American wilderness, gazed upon unreadable pages in a university library, and descended in our imaginations into flooded chambers and cursed ruins. What binds these disparate locations together, from the sunken city of Heracleion to the lost library of Ivan the Terrible, is not just their shared secrecy, but the powerful human impulses they represent. In each one, we see the immense ambition of our ancestors, the drive to build imperishable monuments, to acquire unimaginable wealth, to protect sacred knowledge, and to achieve immortality in the memory of those who would follow. These sites are the physical manifestations of humanity's highest hopes and deepest fears, stone and soil testaments to the fact that our predecessors were just as complex, just as brilliant, and just as fallible as we are today. Tragedy is another thread woven tightly through this tapestry of the unknown. The story of the Roanoke colonists is one of desperate hope turning to silent mystery. The fate of Percy Fawcett and his son in the Amazon is a tale of noble obsession consumed by the jungle's green embrace. The curse of Bangor Fort speaks to a narrative of love and power twisted into a legacy of fear. These are not just cold archaeological puzzles, they are human stories marked by loss, courage, and often a profound sense of melancholy. They remind us that history is not merely a record of events, but a collection of countless individual lives, each with its own dreams and its own stark end. The silence that now surrounds these places is a silence left by people who laughed, loved, and struggled, making their vanished footsteps echo all the more powerfully across the centuries. At the heart of it all, however, is the simple, unshakable allure of the unknown itself. It is the same magnetic force that has driven explorers to map continents and scientists to peer into the depths of space. The fact that in our modern age of satellites and instant information, these substantial secrets can still exist is both humbling and thrilling. They are reminders that our world, for all we have discovered, still holds shadows where mysteries can breathe. They challenge the arrogance of assuming we have all the answers, inviting us instead to embrace wonder and curiosity. The empty sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid asks us what we have missed. The single word Croatoan dares us to imagine a different ending. The unbroken seal on Qin Shi Huang's tomb promises that wonders beyond our current comprehension still await. This enduring allure is what transforms these locations from mere historical footnotes into living legends that continue to capture our collective imagination. Now we turn the question over to you. With 25 profound enigmas laid out, which one captures your mind most powerfully? Does the engineered genius of the Oak Island money pit and its relentless booby traps fire your curiosity? Or are you drawn to the intellectual labyrinth of the Voynich Manuscript, a puzzle of language and art that sits quietly on a library shelf? Perhaps the romantic tragedy of Cleopatra's lost tomb, or the spiritual power guarding Genghis Khan's resting place, speaks to you on a deeper level. Let us know in the comments below which mystery you would most want to see solved and why. Your perspective adds another valuable voice to this centuries-long conversation. And while these secrets have remained stubbornly hidden for hundreds, even thousands of years, it is entirely possible that one of them could be unveiled within our lifetime. A technological breakthrough might allow us to safely peer into the Great Pyramid's big void. A determined archaeologist working with a new clue or a fresh interpretation of an old map might finally pinpoint the location of the lost city of Z or the tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. The next great discovery is always just one excavation, one scan, or one translated word away. History is not a closed book. It is a story we are still actively writing, and you have a front row seat to the next chapter. If you want to be there when these ancient riddles are finally solved, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are constantly tracking the latest developments in archaeology and historical research, and we will be here to bring you the groundbreaking news the moment one of these timeless mysteries finally gives up its secret. The past is not done speaking. Stay curious and join us for